starting the spoilers from the original Spider-Man. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 76. It's nice to see you. You look fine, Harry. Mary Jane was a little surprised that Harry recovered so quickly. I've never felt so good before. I don't even know who you are anymore. It's so strange. I bumped my head and felt carefree like a bird, Harry said to Mary Jane with a smile. Then can you let me bump your head too? Mary Jane joked. She really wanted to forget the troubles recently. Harry reached out and bumped her forehead and made a sound effect to imitate the bump. Hey. Peter said you are participating in a drama performance. Mary Jane nodded. You came too and gave me flowers. I gave flowers? I'll come again tonight. Harry didn't remember this anymore. You can't come because I was fired. Mary Jane told Harry her story with a heavy face. What happened? Harry frowned. Maybe I'm not good enough. Mary Jane shrugged. Oh, it's really uncomfortable, but I wrote a script for you when I was in high school. Harry lowered his head a little embarrassedly. His words made Mary Jane laugh. You wrote a script for me? Yeah. Harry, you are so nice. Mary Jane looked at Harry with red eyes, remembering that they had been happy for a while. At this time, Gwen's voice came. So I ask you, when you fall from the sky without a parachute, or your store is robbed, and your house is on fire, who will save you from falling from the sky? Who will put out the fire and save your children? Spider-Man. The fans present shouted in unison. Parker landed on the roof of a building outside the city wearing a spider suit. Looking at his fans below, he couldn't help but say, they all love me. Then let us see our friendly neighbor, Spider-Man. With Gwen's words and actions, Parker put on the spider hood and swung towards the podium from a distance. Everyone on the stage stood up one after another. The fans below cheered his name enthusiastically, and the honor guard also started playing music at the right time. Parker swung to the top of the fans' heads, high-fived their raised hands, greeted them, and then turned over to the stage, lying on the sign, and looking at everyone. Spider-Man. Everyone cheered to welcome his arrival. Parker slowly descended with a spider silk hanging upside down. Reporters from many media and newspapers also used their cameras to shoot this shocking moment. Kiss him. Kiss him. The audience began to make noises. Gwen turned her head away a little embarrassedly, not daring to look at her most admired idol. Come on. Kiss. Parker was instigated by countless fans. He didn't want to disappoint the fans. He also saw that Gwen was very nervous, so he took the initiative to talk to her. Really? Gwen was a little bit unbelievable that she could kiss Spider-Man. Yes. They will like it. All the adults present shouted in unison for them to kiss, and only one child refused. Gwen, like Mary Jane at the beginning, lifted the hood on his chin and kissed him. Mary Jane, who was far away, watched this scene and immediately became jealous. She turned around and left. Harry said, I hope Peter can take this photo. When he came to his senses, Mary Jane had already walked away. Oh yeah, it's really nice to be intimate with your fans in such an occasion. Tony couldn't help but imagine what he would feel like in such an occasion. But Mary Jane's mood has become worse. Her career is not going well, and her boyfriend is kissing someone else. I guess Peter Parker didn't expect Mary Jane to be jealous. Rod laughed. Parker watched himself and Gwen kissing passionately in class, and he couldn't help but think about what her kiss was like. His eyes fell on Gwen in the front row. Gwen lowered her head shyly, not daring to look at Peter Parker behind her, and the classmates in the class also cheered them to kiss in real life. Professor Connors smiled when he saw this, but Director Stus's mood was not so beautiful. He felt very uncomfortable seeing his daughter being taken advantage of by someone else, even if that person was Spider-Man. Gwen successfully kissed her idol. She was very happy, but also felt shy. This was the first time she was so intimate with someone. Mary Jane walked out of the crowd, and Harry chased after her, grabbed her and asked, Hey, are you okay? Mary Jane said, yeah, I'm fine. Just as Mary Jane was distracted, a sandstorm suddenly appeared in the sky in the distance. The sandstorm swept directly across the venue, covering countless people. Gwen and Parker on the stage also saw this scene. The sandstorm incarnated by Marco quickly moved away from here. Just at this time, 2 police officers came out of the bank with 2 bags of money. They put the money into the armored car, and just behind them, Marco had already arrived nearby, but they knew nothing about it. Marco saw the armored car on the road, and chased it without hesitation. The driver saw a strange shadow appear on the roof of the car from the rear view mirror. He immediately wanted to remind his colleagues in the back seat, but it was too late. Before he finished speaking, Marco punched through the roof of the car. The policeman was almost hit, and fell to the ground in fear. He immediately took out a shotgun, and wanted to shoot, but Marco didn't give him any chance, and rushed directly into the money transporter. A large amount of sand directly filled the interior of the money transporter, and the bulletproof glass was crushed. The sand flooded the cab. The accelerator was pressed to the bottom. The money transporter drove faster and faster on the street and directly knocked over a taxi waiting for the red light. Parker swung on the spider web and quickly chased the money transporter. At this time, Marco in the car had put all the money into the bag. Just as he was about to leave with the money, Parker jumped down from the gap in the roof. Game over, man. Parker stared at him coldly. Marco looked at Spider-Man and said to him, "I don't want to hurt you. Get out of here." His words made Parker laugh. "I guess you may not have heard that I'm the sheriff of this area." Marco saw that Parker had no intention of leaving, so he nodded. "Okay." Then he punched Parker, who easily avoided his attack, and punched him back. Chapter 77. Parker punched through Marco's stomach, and a lot of sand fell to the ground from his stomach. Parker tried to pull his arm out, but Marco held it tightly with sand. He could only say "oh my." Marco looked at him with a bad expression, and then his right arm swelled up and became a sand fist. He punched Parker out of the money transporter with a heavy punch. Parker broke through the rear door, fell directly to the ground, and rolled several times, but he adjusted his body in time to shoot spider silk to stick to the money transporter, and stepped on the deformed door as a skateboard to catch up. Various vehicles kept passing along the way, and Parker kept shooting spider silk to change direction to avoid the vehicles on the road while moving towards the money transporter. Finally, Parker jumped into the air and kept shooting spider silk balls at Marco, who had already reached the roof of the car. Marco's body was hit by these spider silk balls and holes were made. With a beautiful front flip in the air, Parker dodged Marco's attack and landed on the roof of the car in a handsome manner, followed by a handsome sweep kick. Marco's legs broke with a sound, and while he was on the ground, Parker used spider silk to pull the money bag that he had dropped from his hand and threw it into the money transporter. But because of this, he was hit by Marco's punch. Parker grabbed the edge of the roof in time and wanted to climb back on the roof, but Marco punched him back with another punch. Parker was forced to swing to the left with the spider silk and ended up hitting a bus head on. The front windshield of the bus shattered with a sound, and the driver stopped the car in a panic. Parker was also hit back to the right side of the money transporter by the bus. He clung to the right side of the car, and Marco took the opportunity to hit him hard again, and Parker was immediately smashed into the car. When he climbed up by the broken window, he found a green cloak truck parked in front of him. He immediately pulled the 2 police officers in the cab out of the cab and shot out spider silk to weave a web to protect them at the last moment. He himself had no time to leave. The money truck directly hit the truck and overturned on the ground. Parker inside was also affected. When the money truck stopped rolling and slid on the ground, he climbed out of the car. At this time, Marco had come to the roof of a nearby building and looked at him. Parker looked around and didn't see Marco. Marco knew that he couldn't get the money with Spider-Man around, so he could only leave angrily. The 2 police officers rescued by Parker also climbed down from the spider web. Seeing that they were not seriously injured, Parker left there with peace of mind. Parker came to a house, took off his hood, and saw that his head was full of sand. He shook his head and complained, "Where did these guys come from?" Then he took off his shoes and poured out a pile of sand from them. "It's really difficult. Rod, do you want me to add a flamethrower for you? If you encounter this kind of situation in the future, just melt him directly." Tony watched the whole battle between Peter Parker and the Sandman and asked Rod on the side. Okay. Rod gestured to indicate that he was okay. He also felt that this kind of enemy was very tricky. Ordinary physical attacks were ineffective against him. Parker punched through his abdomen, but did not cause any damage. Instead, Parker was beaten away by him. Although Parker had extremely high physical fitness and strong defense, and was not injured, Parker would suffer if he continued to fight like this. Parker couldn't help thinking in class, if Marco really became like this, how should he deal with him? Kana saw that Parker didn't speak and looked thoughtful. He also knew what he was thinking, so he didn't bother him. At night, Parker came to the door of the Constellation Hotel in a suit and tie, took out a ring from his jacket pocket, took a look at it, and walked into the hotel. Mary Jane walked to the busy road and accidentally saw a newspaper on the shelf. It said Spider-Man's fans kissed him passionately at an important ceremony. There was also a photo of Gwen and Parker kissing. Mary Jane looked at the newspaper, and her anger burned even more violently, while Parker was still preparing to give Mary Jane a surprise without knowing it. Parker looked at the busy staff walking around in the hotel, and wanted to walk into the lobby. At this time, the front desk clerk stopped him. Sir, please wait. Parker turned his head, and looked at him, then walked up to him with a smile. The front desk asked in French, good evening. Do you have a reservation? Sorry, I don't speak French very well. Parker didn't know French very well, so he could only reply to him in English. Seeing that the front desk also replied in English, but this is a French restaurant, isn't it? Parker shrugged and said something in French. The receptionist pointed at him and smiled in surprise. What's your name? Peter Parker. After hearing Parker's name, the receptionist picked up a whistle and blew it. The waiter next to him handed him a pen. He took it and started looking for it. Soon he found Parker's name. Here it is. A table for two. Shell. Parker. Hearing the receptionist say it wrong, Parker reminded him. That's what I said. Shell. Because of the accent, Parker became Shell, and Parker could only accept this new name. I have a request. My girlfriend is back, and I have a ring. Hearing Parker's words, the receptionist exclaimed in surprise, ah, and took the ring from Parker's hand. When he saw the diamond on the ring, that couldn't be any smaller, he had to take out his glasses and put them on to see the diamond clearly. He pointed at the diamond ring with his finger and greeted it. Oh, so you're going to propose to her tonight? Yes, so I want something special. Give her a surprise. Parker told him his idea. The receptionist said with approval, I like it. It's super romantic. I'm French. He looked at Parker with a smile. When I signal you, bring up the champagne in the ring. Parker gestured. The ring is in her champagne glass. The receptionist knew these things too well, and added before Parker finished speaking. Yes, and if I can ask the performers to play this piece at the same time. Parker took out a piece of music from his pocket and handed it to him. They will definitely be happy to help. Parker was also very happy to get the affirmation, and at the same time, did not forget to remind, be careful not to lose the ring. Don't worry, I guarantee it with my life, sir. Then the waiter invited him in French, and Parker also responded to him in French. Seeing this, the receptionist smiled and said, I like you. Chapter 78. The receptionist took Parker to their seat and asked him to enjoy his meal in French. Parker sat on the table and repeated the French phrase, enjoy your meal. Parker began to practice the scene of meeting Mary Jane later. At this time, Mary Jane also came to the door. Parker saw her at a glance and hurriedly went up to greet her. The two hugged each other. As soon as they sat down, Mary Jane asked sarcastically, can you afford this restaurant? Hearing her words, Parker waved his hand and said, oh, this is a special occasion. You are a Broadway star. Hearing Parker's words, Mary Jane's mood suddenly became bad. I don't feel like a star tonight. Oh, you are a star. You are already a star. Parker firmly believed that Mary Jane was already a star, but he didn't know that Mary Jane had been fired. Peter, you don't understand how I feel now. Mary Jane's expression was a little sad. Oh, no. I know exactly how you feel. Listen, I've been through this, and it happens to me all the time. Parker looked at Mary Jane seriously, hoping that she could understand that she was the same as her. I saw the poster of Spider-Man outside the window. The kids running on the street were wearing sweaters with my sweaters printed on them. Halloween products. I don't know. I guess I've become some kind of idol. Just like yesterday, they kept shouting Spider-Man. Spider-Man. I don't know either. I mean, sometimes I wonder, I'm just a nerd from a small place. Should all this belong to me? Just as Parker was talking to Mary Jane, he suddenly saw Gwen, and Gwen also saw him and greeted him. Mary Jane saw Peter's gesture, turned her head, and saw Gwen, and at the same time, the front desk mistakenly thought it was time, so she asked the waiters to bring champagne to serve, and Parker quickly stopped him. Gwen walked up to him. "Hi. My parents and I are here for dinner." Then she greeted Mary Jane. "Hello. My name is Gwen Stacy." Gwen shook hands with Mary Jane, and Parker introduced Gwen. "This is Mary Jane Watson." Hearing Parker's words, Gwen looked at Mary Jane in surprise. "Oh, I can finally meet you. Peter mentions you all the time," and put her hand on Parker's shoulder. Mary Jane glanced at the hand on Parker's shoulder, then looked at Parker, who explained, "Gwen is my lab partner in Dr. Kana's course." Gwen praised Parker. "Peter is a genius. Without him, I might have given up." I suddenly remembered. "Peter, did you take a picture of me kissing Spider-Man? Can you bring it to class?" Parker nodded, and Gwen said happily, "I like it so much. I can stick it on my bag." After all, how many people can be kissed by Spider-Man? Mary Jane felt very uncomfortable listening to Gwen's words. Gwen had no ill intentions, but she just couldn't help but want to show off. But Mary Jane's jealous heart was turning over and over again. She forced a smile and said to her, "It's really hard to imagine." At the same time, she glared at Parker. Gwen read Mary Jane's expression that she was not happy. She thought it might be because she boasted to her that she had kissed Spider-Man, so she restrained her smile and said, "Oh, it's really nice to meet you." Then she said goodnight to Parker and left. Parker gestured to Gwen, and the front desk again mistakenly thought that she was arguing with him, so the waiter came out with champagne. Parker gestured again, so they were called back by the front desk again. Parker explained to Mary Jane, "She and I are in science class together, and chemistry is not a strong point." Mary Jane listened to Parker's words, and looked at him with a frown. Parker didn't understand what was wrong with Mary Jane. "Then why have you never mentioned her?" Mary Jane asked, suppressing her anger. "She is your experimental partner. You saved her life. She also thinks you are a genius. She also casually put her beautiful hand on your shoulder. Didn't you notice it?" Parker's expression became a little solemn, not knowing what Mary Jane wanted to express. "She made Spider-Man a city hero. I will never forget it." Mary Jane's jealous look made Parker a little overwhelmed. He explained with a stiff expression on his face, "She is just a classmate in the class." "Then let me ask you, when you kissed her, who was kissing her? Spider-Man or Peter?" Mary Jane stared at him closely. "What do you mean?" "You know exactly what I mean. That was our kiss. Why did you do that? You should know how that would make me feel. Are you trying to dump me?" Parker finally realized his problem, but Mary Jane's words made him feel speechless. "Dump you? Why would I dump you? I love you. You are my girlfriend. She is just a classmate of mine." Mary Jane. It is a pity that Mary Jane could not listen to Parker's words at all. She was immersed in her own world. "I feel bad. Sorry, I have to go." She stood up and left. Parker tried to stop her. "No. Wait a minute." The front desk in the distance thought it was a signal to him, and he immediately snapped his fingers, so the waiters came over with things. "Where are you going? Please, don't follow me." Mary Jane turned around and said to him painfully. Parker stood there stupidly. The receptionist didn't know what happened yet. She smiled and helped him put the champagne on the table. Parker turned around and took out the ring from the champagne glass. He wiped it clean with a cloth in a daze. Mary Jane was inferior. She found that she was nothing compared to Gwen. Even the spider kiss that she had enjoyed before no longer belonged to her alone. That's why she broke down. Rod nodded in agreement and complained. She kissed so many boyfriends before, including that Flash, Harry, and John. Uncle Ben sat next to Aunt May. Norman was right before. Mary Jane is that kind of person. So she can't accept a woman who is better than her in all aspects next to Peter. She loves Spider-Man, not Peter, and Peter can't give her anything except the identity of Spider-Man that cannot be exposed. What Cheyenne Moose said is indeed reasonable. Aunt May nodded gently and leaned on Ben's shoulder. The receptionist scratched his head in embarrassment. He didn't work in the restaurant yet, but was still the doorman of the theater. In the Sky Dome, he repeatedly misunderstood Parker's meaning, which made the onlookers laugh. Fortunately, as long as he himself was not embarrassed, it would be others who were embarrassed. This was not the first time he appeared in the Sky Dome. The last time he appeared in the Sky Dome was to stop Parker outside the door, resulting in Parker's failure to enter the theater. During that time, he was also somewhat condemned. Some people blamed him for Parker's loss of superpowers. Fortunately, he survived in the end. Chapter 79. Parker wanted to call Mary Jane, but no one answered, so he could only leave her a message. Hello, please answer the phone. I don't know what's wrong with you. I don't know if you heard my message. The scene came to Mary Jane, who was standing by the phone listening silently. But, I just want to talk to you. Parker didn't know what to say to Mary Jane, so he could only ask Mary Jane to call him again, and then hung up. Just as Parker hung up the phone, Mary Jane walked up and picked up the phone, but Parker had already hung up, so she could only sigh. As soon as Parker left the phone rang again. He thought it was Mary Jane, so he quickly went back to answer it. He said hello, with joy. A man's voice came from the other end of the phone. Mr. Parker? Parker answered yes. This is Detective Neil Gari from District 32. I'm calling you on behalf of Captain Stacy. He hopes you can come to the police station. At first, we thought this man, Dennis Carradine, was the murderer of your husband. We were wrong. George Stacy said to Aunt May. Parker and Aunt May stood in front of Stacy. Hearing him say this, Aunt May said in disbelief, "What?" George Stacy continued to explain. Now it seems that Mr. Carradine is just an accomplice, and the real murderer is still at large. Parker found it a little hard to accept this. For many years, he has firmly believed that Carradine is the murderer. Although his death still cannot let Parker let go, he at least helped Uncle Ben to avenge. Now hearing another situation for the first time, Parker couldn't help but question him. What do you mean? This person is the murderer who killed your husband. He put the photo of Flint Marko in front of the two of them. Parker picked up the photo and couldn't sit still anymore. His name is Flint Marko, a third-rate gangster who often goes in and out of prison. George Stacy explained Marko's identity to them. You are wrong. Parker couldn't accept that he had killed someone by mistake and could only keep denying that Marko was the real murderer, especially since Marko had just escaped from him yesterday. He escaped 2 days ago. He confessed his crime to his cellmates. In addition, we have many witnesses who can confirm this. Parker listened to George Stacy's words and seemed to have returned to the night when Uncle Ben was killed. He was waiting for Parker in the car, and Marko knocked on his car window with a pistol. He pulled Ben Parker out of the car, and Uncle Ben wanted to persuade him. No, wait a minute, kid. You don't have to do this. But Marko ignored him and pushed him to the ground. Carradine ran over and wanted to pull him away as soon as possible. Carradine sat in the driver's seat, but Marko looked at Uncle Ben, who fell to the ground and raised his gun to him. Carradine yelled at him, "Get in the car. What are you doing?" Marko shot at Uncle Ben. Carradine drove away from the scene and Marko also left there. Parker imagined the scene at that time and tears flowed down involuntarily. Is this his imagination or the actual experience? Tony was a little confused for a while. It should be his own imagination. He portrayed Carradine as an ordinary robber who didn't want to kill anyone, and Marko was portrayed as a vicious gangster. Rod frowned and said, "It makes sense. Obviously, he had already robbed the car. Marko had no reason to kill Ben Parker. Carradine had been urging him to leave there." Tony nodded. He felt that Peter Parker regretted his mistaken killing of Carradine. If it was really as he imagined, wouldn't Carradine have died in vain? Aunt May dared not look at the photos anymore. She wanted Stacy to take the photos away. George Stacy said to her with an apologetic look. I'm sorry Mrs. Parker, I know this is hard to accept, but please be patient, we will do our duty and catch the murderer. Listening to George Stacy's words, Parker couldn't help it anymore. He said to Stacy with red eyes, no, you didn't do your job well. I watched my uncle die, and then I chased the wrong person. At this moment, his mind was full of the scene when Carradine died. He could have grabbed Carradine at the beginning, but he didn't. He let him fall down the stairs. Now you say you have found another suspect in the past 2 years. And there are witnesses? Why are you so angry? Why didn't you tell us earlier? George Stacy wanted Parker to calm down, but Parker couldn't calm down at all. Parker pointed at Marco's face and said angrily, this guy killed my uncle and is still at large. He threw the photo to the ground fiercely and walked out of the room. I'm sorry. Marco knelt in front of Peter and apologized to him sincerely. Carradine was also beside him. To some extent, Carradine not only didn't hate Parker, but was a little grateful to him. Because he is still alive now, and he in the sky has been dead for a long time. Harry has promised me that he will sponsor your daughter's treatment, but you must promise me that you can't commit crimes again, otherwise Harry will revoke his sponsorship of your daughter. Parker looked at Marco, who was kneeling and crying in front of him, with a rare serious look. For his daughter, he was willing to do anything. Hearing Parker's words, he immediately agreed. Harry patted Parker's shoulder and Parker smiled at him. Get up and find a job. Your wife and daughter still need you to support them. Harry is only responsible for helping her with her illness. You have to do the rest yourself. If you can't find a job, I can arrange one for you, but you have to do it honestly. Harry also cleared his throat and said to Marco, thank you. Thank you. Marco said sincerely gratefully. Let's go. Harry and Parker left. Carradine patted Marco's shoulder and said, come on. Peter Parker, you changed the fate of Flint. Marco. As a reward, I will give you a gift. Gift? What gift? Parker was about to leave when he heard the voice of the narrator and subconsciously looked up at the sky. Venom. It will no longer affect people's personalities. I will eliminate its weaknesses, and you will have absolute control over it. A meteorite flying towards the Earth in the universe was suddenly covered by a white light, and then the white light dissipated, and the meteorite flew towards the Earth as usual. But the venom in the meteorite has already arrived on the Earth, in Peter Parker's room, but Parker doesn't know that venom has already arrived in his room. He was staring at the sky with wide eyes, and at the same time the whole world was in an uproar. Tony was also shocked. How could it be like this? Chapter 80. Parker returned to the rental house and waited for the information on the intercom channel. At this time, a police message sounded. There was an abandoned vehicle and an old man lying in the middle of the road on L20 Park Street, asking nearby police officers to rush to the scene. In the end, it was corrected to Valbesh Road. Parker was unmoved. At this time, there was a sudden knock on the door, and Mary Jane's voice came. Peter, I'm Mary Jane. I'm not here for dinner. Please, open the door. Parker opened the door with force. Aunt May called me and told me what happened. She was worried about you, and I was worried about you too. Mary Jane walked in and closed the door, talking to Parker while closing it. Don't worry, I'm fine. Parker looked calm, but it made Mary Jane even more worried. I don't want you to do anything stupid, like looking for the murderer who killed my uncle, and do something that you will regret, like killing another robber. Mary Jane looked at Parker. He pointed a gun at me. I dodged it, and he fell down. I told you. Mary Jane quickly explained. I'm not blaming you. At this time, the police report sounded again. Mary Jane didn't want their conversation to be interrupted. Can you turn off the radio first? Hearing this, Parker turned down the volume of the radio. Seeing this, Mary Jane continued. Peter, I came because I was worried about you. I also know that you made a mistake and made you feel guilty. I just want to be with you and help you. Okay. I know, thank you. But I'm fine. I don't need your help. Parker looked fine on the surface. Hearing him say this, Mary Jane could only turn around and leave here. But before leaving, she still said to Parker, everyone will need help, Peter. Even Spider-Man. Parker looked at Mary Jane closing the door, not knowing what he was thinking. The police report interrupted his thoughts, and he walked over to turn up the volume of the radio again. Parker put on his spider suit, ready to go out and find Marco as soon as he heard any news about him. Parker waited all night, but unfortunately there was no news from Marco. He fell asleep in bed without taking off his suit due to exhaustion. With thunder and lightning outside the window, Parker dreamed of Uncle Ben's death. The guilt in his heart kept him awake at night and he often woke up in his sleep. A strange perspective appeared in the sky, and Parker hid aside when he woke up. When Parker lay down again, he quietly moved towards the bed. Peter Parker was lying on the bed, and a savage shadow appeared on the wall next to him. Parker was still immersed in the dream of Uncle Ben's death without noticing it at all. The black mucus directly stuck to his arm. Parker kept reviewing the scene of Marco shooting. The venom slowly covered his whole body. He dreamed of Kedin's death. Venom has covered his entire body and is heading towards his head. Parker didn't react until then, but it was too late. The venom completely wrapped him up. Is that venom? Tony couldn't care about drinking anymore. He shouted, "Jarvis, record everything about this black slime. Analyze its weaknesses." Cheyenne Moo said there are weaknesses, so there must be. Otherwise there is no need to eliminate them. Peter Parker, who is not possessed by venom, can already stop a train accelerating at full speed with his own strength. Tony can't imagine how strong he will be after being possessed by venom. Can his armor withstand him? Fortunately, Cheyenne Moo makes venom controlled by Peter Parker, so he doesn't have to worry about Peter Parker's blackening, but he still decides to make the anti-venom spider armor. Who knows if there is such a creature in their universe? It is best to be prepared for everything. If a similar guy pops up one day, he also has a way to deal with it. And the big green guy, what if venom is attached to Banner? Tony felt that he needed to make a battle armor with full strength and defense. Nick Fury also frowned as he watched Parker being possessed. He was eager to know how Peter Parker took it off. Hill walked in and said to him, "Our people have analyzed something. This mucus has been with Peter Parker for several days, but it took advantage of Peter Parker's restlessness tonight. You mean it may have tried to possess Peter Parker before, but because the spider sense failed, it wasn't until tonight, when Parker was haunted by a nightmare, that he approached him? Yes. Fuck." Egghead couldn't help but curse, which means that this thing doesn't just rely on instinct, it has a high IQ. Parker looked at the scene played on the sky screen, and then looked down at Venom jumping in front of him, and didn't know what to do for a moment. "Where am I?" Parker muttered to himself in confusion, and then found that he was hanging upside down outside a building. Through the glass outside the building, he saw a brand new self. The red and blue spider suit turned black, with a little white spider pattern. What is this? This feeling? Parker felt his whole body filled with unimaginable power, and he had never been in such a good state. He couldn't help but say wow, and said, "This feels so good." He stood sideways outside the building, flipped up and then jumped down with a backflip. He couldn't help shouting in the air, venting his unprecedented strength. He easily swung from the ground to the roof of the opposite tall building with a spider silk, which was a move he had never done before. Parker stuck to the pointed pillar on the roof, took off his hood, looked at the black spider suit, and couldn't help but sighed. This is another completely different feeling. Are there any results? Jarvis. Tony saw Peter Parker's initial performance and asked Jarvis. Both the strength, speed and the distance of the spider silk have been greatly increased. He has never swung to the top of a tall building so easily before. Anything else? Tony asked. There is no more data on the increase in the strength of the spider silk and the speed of the strength, and it is impossible to clearly reflect the maximum increase. More information is needed for reference. Okay, let's wait and see how powerful the so-called strongest venom spider suit is. Tony stared at Peter Parker's face in the sky. Chapter 81. Peter, did Cheyenne Moo really give you that venom? Uncle Ben asked. Yes, I'm looking at it now. Parker looked at venom crawling in front of him. He brought venom to school and checked it with Gwen. At the same time, he asked Dr. Connors to help study whether it was really as Cheyenne Moo said. Gwen was a little scared at first, but venom seemed to like Gwen very much and kept getting close to her. Unless Parker stopped it, it would sneak up on Gwen whenever it had a chance. Gwen touched it a little and found that venom seemed very docile. it would be excited to touch her fingers, so she gradually let go of her fear. After Parker finished the call with Uncle Ben, he looked at Gwen on the side. Because of the affirmation of the narrator, Gwen's feelings for Parker were directly pointed out, so Parker also tried to be with Gwen, and the two became closer and closer. "Sorry, my uncle wants to know about Venom," Parker said to her with an apologetic look. "Yeah, I understand. My dad is always worried about me. By the way, my mom invited you to dinner at my house. She wants to see you in person." Gwen smiled at him gently and told him what her mother said. Parker sent the Venom to Dr. Connors overnight and asked him to help study it. "What do you think it is?" Connors observed the Venom with a microscope and replied to Parker's question. "I've never seen anything like this. I'm a physicist, not a biologist. I'll study it again in the morning and do some tests. Can we do it now?" Parker asked. Just as Connors was talking to Parker, the small lump of Venom slipped off the microscope and rushed towards Parker. Parker discovered its little movement in time and covered it with a beaker. The Venom inside was frantically trying to find an exit to escape. Connors saw this scene and said to Parker, "It looks like it likes you very much." Parker didn't dare to answer his question. Connors stared at the jumping Venom and told Parker, "Don't let this thing attach to you." Parker didn't quite understand why. Connors explained to him, "It has the characteristics of a parasite, which means it needs to parasitize on the host to survive. In fact, once these creatures are attached to the host, it is very difficult to get rid of them." Connors warned Parker seriously, "Does the small piece that is separated still have its own consciousness?" Tony pondered about the characteristics of Venom. Obviously that point cannot be all of Venom, but only a small part of it, but it still has the ability to move and find a host. Nick Fury also summoned the biologists of the Snake Shield to speculate on the characteristics of this thing. Parker, who had just returned home, heard a police report on the radio as soon as he entered the door, and also mentioned that another sandstorm had appeared nearby. Parker immediately realized that it was Marco. He immediately walked to the closet and reached out to take the spider suit, but his hand stopped halfway and turned his eyes to the box below. He opened the box, revealing the black Venom spider suit inside. He hesitated for only a second before deciding to put it on. In the night sky, Parker jumped from the air wearing a black suit and began to move quickly towards the place where Marco appeared. With his movements, he soon arrived at the door of the robbed bank and saw a car overturned outside the door. The door of the bank had been destroyed and many US dollars were floating out of it. He glanced at the security guard lying on the ground and at the same time saw a stream of fine sand flowing into the sewer. At this time, Eddie also rushed to the scene in a taxi. He took out cash from his pocket and handed it to the driver, then ran over here with a camera. Parker pulled out the railing of the sewer along with the cement on the side and threw it aside. Eddie saw Parker wearing the Venom spider suit and exclaimed, "Wow, man. What a cool new suit." Parker turned around and saw Eddie behind him. Eddie said excitedly, "This is exactly the exclusive news I need." Reported before Parker. "Quickly show your signature move and shoot spider webs." Parker wearing Venom didn't care about Eddie. Hearing that he wanted to take this opportunity to defeat him, Parker unceremoniously used spider silk to stick Eddie's camera and then threw it, and the camera smashed against the wall and shattered on the spot. "Goodbye, idiot." Parker after mocking him, he jumped directly into the sewer. Eddie shouted at Parker who had disappeared without a trace, "How did I offend you?" Seeing that Spider-Man had disappeared without a trace, he was unwilling but helpless. He looked around and took out a small camera from his arms and started shooting. "Peter, will you break people's things like this if you wear Venom now?" George Stacy glanced at Parker who was a little restless when he just came home. "No. How could I?" Parker knew his character very well. Even if Eddie was competing with him for a job, he would never do such a thing. The side effects of Venom have been eliminated by the Sky Curtain. Now I'm asking Dr. Connors to study its characteristics to see if it will be different from those in the Sky Curtain. Parker explained to George Stacy. Venom was in his trouser pocket at this moment, shrinking into a ball. "George, you scared him. You know Peter's character better than anyone else. How long have you studied it?" "Since the Sky screen was launched." Mrs. Stacy helped Parker out of the predicament. Then she placed a plate of fruit in front of Parker and smiled at him. "Don't worry, George is just like that. The venom affected Peter. Didn't Skyscreen say that? It will amplify other people's evil thoughts. Even a very kind Peter will be affected to do those things." Gwen sat aside to defend Parker. George looked at his wife and couldn't help but sigh that a girl can't be kept when she grows up. This character has not been drawn yet, but her elbow has turned outward. In the sewer, Marco was walking along the railroad tracks with 2 bags of money, and he didn't notice that Parker was crawling on the ceiling behind him. At this time, the train passed by, and the light shone on Parker, who was dressed in black. Marco looked back and looked up, as if he had noticed something. At this time, the light disappeared, and Parker was hidden in the darkness. Marco stared at Parker's position for a few seconds, but didn't find anything suspicious, so he turned around and continued to walk forward. As soon as he turned around, Parker appeared in front of him, hanging upside down. The sudden appearance of the black shadow scared Marco, and he took 2 steps back unconsciously. "Flint, Marco." Marco reacted and immediately tried to attack Parker with his right hand. Parker dodged to the side, and Marco chased him and punched him. Parker easily avoided it. Marco punched a hole in the wall, and Parker jumped to the ceiling in front of him and stared at him. "What do you want to do to me?" he asked Parker angrily. "Remember Ben Parker? The old man you brutally shot? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 82. Parker's words reminded Marco of some bad memories. His eyes changed for a while, and I don't know what he thought of. "What on earth does this bother you?" Marco didn't know why Parker was staring at him and asked angrily. At this time, a train came, and Parker jumped to the other side and then yelled at Marco, "My everything." Then he fired spider silk at him, and Marco subconsciously avoided it. Unexpectedly, Parker's target was the train. He took advantage of the speed of the train and his own strength to kick Marco hard. Marco was kicked out before he even had time to react and fell heavily on the track below. The 2 bags of money in his hand also fell out of his hand and fell further down. Marco, who fell on the track, struggled to support his upper body and then saw Parker swinging the spider silk and kicking him. He immediately reacted by turning his legs into sand and stretching them out, pressing them against Parker's abdomen, intercepting Parker's attack, and then punching Parker backhand and sending him flying. Parker fell on the track, and a train happened to be in front of him. Parker dodged it with a backflip at the critical moment. Then he shot a spider silk from below to go around Marco's back and kicked him hard to the side of the train, and he fell to the ground. Parker rushed over and grabbed the back of his neck, pressing his head against the speeding train. Half of Marco's head was immediately worn away, and Marco screamed in pain. The train completely passed, and most of Marco's head disappeared, revealing the sand inside. He half knelt on the ground, gathering the sand with both hands to condense his head again. "It's time for you to pay with blood, Marco." Parker yelled at him, and while he was talking, Marco hit Parker with a backslam, knocking him onto the train passing behind. Parker was hit by the train, and he couldn't control his body for a while and hit another train. Marco took the opportunity to punch him, and Parker flew backwards and broke the window of the train. But after he fell to the ground, he immediately stood up and hit Marco in the face with a backswinging punch, which immediately made a dent in his face. Marco was hit so hard by the punch that he couldn't stop and hit the handle of the train head on, and there was another dent on his face. Parker grabbed his neck and punched him again, knocking Marco off the track. Parker still grabbed him, and Marco fought back in the air. Then his body hit the pipe. Parker punched him hard from above. The pipe couldn't bear the force and broke into on the spot. The two continued to fall down. Parker's body adjustment was obviously higher than Marco's in the air. He adjusted his body easily and kicked him again. Marco screamed and fell into the pool below. Marco, who fell into the water, wanted to get up, but found that his body could no longer be condensed after being wet. He looked at his arm without fingers in horror. Parker in the back also saw this scene. He yelled and kicked Marco. Marco dodged in time, but Parker kicked the pipe. The thick sewer pipe began to spray water immediately. Marco looked at the pipe and had a bad premonition in his heart, and then his premonition came true. Parker grabbed the pipe joint with both hands and began to exert force. Marco had just climbed up when he saw the nails on the pipe began to burst out and water gushed out of it. Marco's expression began to become terrified. As the nails popped out in large numbers, the pipe immediately broke into pieces and a large amount of water gushed out of it, and Marco, who was in front of the pipe, was the first to bear the brunt. A large amount of water directly washed Marco out. He kept struggling in the water, popped his head out, and then found that his whole body was constantly dissolving. Parker watched the sand on Marco's body being washed away by the water, and finally nothing was left. He thought Marco had died and said, "Rest in peace." Is Marco solved like this? It seems that it is not too difficult to deal with. Tony sighed after watching Parker solve Marco. He thought it would be so difficult to deal with, but it was just like this. After Peter Parker put on the Venom suit, his strength improved significantly. Compared with the previous battle with Marco, Peter Parker's strength was obviously stronger than Marco's in this battle. He showed no effects when attacked, and even when hit by a speeding train, he was not injured at all. He could even adjust his body to fight back after being hit so hard. After listening to Jarvis' analysis, Tony nodded. He was indeed much stronger. The previous Parker would never be able to fight back like nothing happened after being hit by a train. Parker came to an alley from the sewer, saw himself in the mirror, and tidied his hair. While tidying up, he thought about what had just happened. After killing Marco, Parker's heart did not calm down, but became more turbulent. Back in the rental house, the landlord Dykovich was sweeping the corridor. Seeing Parker coming back, he habitually said, "Rent." "Not now." Parker replied lightly and walked straight to his room. Dykovich stopped sweeping when he heard him. He said as he walked, "Listen, this is a free country, but not a rent-free country." But Parker was very irritated at this time. "Don't mess with me. You have to pay the rent." Dykovich looked at him, and Ulasu also walked out of the room and looked at the two of them. Parker, who was trying to open the door, said to him angrily, "You want rent? Then you have to fix this damn door first." After yelling, Parker saw Ulasu behind him. She was looking at Parker worriedly. Parker subconsciously avoided her eyes and opened the door and walked in. Dykovich looked at the angry Parker with surprise. Ulasu walked behind him, afraid that he would drive Parker out in anger. "He is a little fierce today." Ulasu looked at his father carefully. Dykovich pointed at Parker's door. "He has always had a good temper." Then he turned his head and looked at Ulasu, explaining for Parker, "He must have encountered trouble." "Oh, sorry. I seem to be seriously affected by that. I never say such things." Gwen looked at Parker's nervous look in front of his parents and couldn't help but hold his hand. "It's okay. We know that it's about the venom." Director George looked at the two people holding hands and silently shifted his gaze. His wife smiled gently. She had a good impression of Peter Parker, and Gwen also liked him. Whether it was Gwen in the sky or Gwen in reality, they all liked Peter Parker. What made her worried was that the sky said that the two of them could never be together. She didn't know whether the two of them could finally achieve a happy ending. Parker returned to the room and closed the balcony window as soon as possible. He felt that his behavior today was very wrong. Suddenly he looked in the mirror and realized something. He unbuttoned his collar, revealing the Venom suit inside. He realized that it was the problem with the Venom suit and quickly took it off and put it in the box. Parker stepped back a few steps and stared at the box. He also knew the horror of Venom. Chapter 83. Flint Malco is the murderer of Uncle Ben. He was killed last night. Parker told Aunt May about Malco. Hearing Parker's words, Aunt May couldn't help but say, "Oh my god," and then asked Parker what happened. "Spider-Man killed him." Parker explained to her. "Spider-Man? I don't understand this. Spider-Man won't kill people. What happened?" Aunt May looked incredulous. She knew Spider-Man never killed people. Faced with Aunt May's question, Parker hesitated but couldn't say anything. "I thought you would think he deserved it, right?" Parker said to Aunt May with a forced smile. I don't think we have the power to decide a person's life or death. Aunt May said with her head down. She thought Parker asked Spider-Man to help him get revenge. But he killed Uncle Ben. Aunt May. Parker looked at Aunt May in confusion. Ben is very important to us, but he never wants us to be filled with hatred. Hatred is like a drug that makes people addicted. Aunt May said with her head down. Before you notice it, turn us into something ugly. Parker listened to Aunt May's words and forced a smile. For some reason, he didn't dare to look her in the eye. Harry looked at Aunt May's words in the sky and felt that they made sense. The self in the sky was swallowed by hatred and did that kind of thing. Today is the day he visits Norman. Norman is tied to the bed and looks at Harry. Don't resent Peter. He didn't do anything wrong. It's my own fault. I'm relieved to leave the company to you. You are my pride. Harry nodded and hugged Norman. His father is still alive, which is the best reward for him. As he said in the sky with amnesia, he can give his life for Peter. In front of the jazz bar, Mary Jane walked out. Since she was fired, she has been looking for a job. Finally, she applied for a job as a waitress and singer here. Mary Jane walked in the crowd, feeling very lost and lost. From a star to a barmaid, this gap was difficult for her to accept. She sat on a public seat on the road, looking at Peter Parker's name on her phone, thinking for a while and finally chose to call Harry. Harry was painting at home. When he heard the phone ring, he walked over and picked it up. Hello. Hey, Harry, this is Mary Jane. Hearing Mary Jane's voice, Harry smiled and greeted her. I want to find someone to accompany me. Are you busy? Can I go to see you? Of course. Come over. Faced with Mary Jane's inquiry, Harry agreed without hesitation. Okay, are you sure I won't disturb you? Of course, I'm free now. Come over. After getting a definite reply, Mary Jane hung up the phone and prepared to find Harry. Bernard. Harry shouted upstairs. What do you want, master? Bernard walked out of the room. We have a guest coming to visit. Can you please prepare some food? A guest? Bernard looked at him in confusion. Yes, a guest. Harry said affirmatively. But Bernard still didn't quite understand. Is it the guest of the guest? Harry urged him unhappily. Don't ask so many questions. Go and prepare the food. I'll go right away, sir. Bernard turned and walked out. Harry also shook his head slightly. What does she mean? Go to Harry instead of Peter Parker? Tony didn't quite understand Mary Jane's approach. Maybe it's because she feels that it's hard for her to face Peter Parker. She went from a star to a bar singer, and this sense of gap made her dare not go to Spider-Man. It's also possible that their feelings faded after the quarrel that day. At least Mary Jane's feelings for Peter Parker faded. Pepper speculated on Mary Jane's thoughts from a female perspective. After Harry left, Norman looked at Mary Jane on the sky and couldn't help sighing in his heart. Harry liked this Mary Jane too much, and he didn't know why Harry liked her so much. He had just advised Harry, but Harry felt that Mary Jane was not so embarrassed. Norman saw this and didn't say anything more, so as not to destroy the father-son relationship between the two. In the rental house, Parker wanted to call Mary Jane, but didn't know what to say. In the end, he could only put down the receiver and turned around to see the landlord Dykovic. Hey, Mr. Dykovic. Parker greeted him. Dykovic held an orange in his hand and asked, would you like an orange? Parker declined his offer and apologized. I'm sorry for what happened just now. I shouldn't have complained loudly about the door. There's nothing to be angry about. It doesn't matter. But if you feel uneasy, you can buy me a pizza sometime. How about today? Dykovic smiled and asked Parker to buy pizza, and Parker agreed without hesitation. Then Dykovic pointed to the phone. Is there anything wrong with the phone? Parker shook his head. No, I'm thinking about what to say. Dykovic walked up to him. If you call a woman, you say, you are an excellent woman, and I'm an excellent man. Parker didn't know what to say when he heard what he said, and Dykovic reaffirmed his statement to him. Urasu greeted Parker from behind, and Parker responded enthusiastically. Dykovic turned around and told her that Parker was talking to a woman on the phone. Urasu immediately said after hearing this, are you calling Mary Jane? I think that's great. Urasu was interrupted by her father before she finished speaking. What's it to you? Go, go. He pushed Urasu into the room and encouraged Parker to call Mary Jane. Urasu also encouraged him before closing the door. Parker picked up the phone again after being encouraged. Urasu forgot to say goodbye to Parker, so he opened the door again and said goodbye to him before closing the door again. Dajkovic looked at his daughter and couldn't understand why she liked Peter Parker so much. She didn't know Peter Parker's identity. On the surface, he was just a poor boy who couldn't even pay the rent. Dad, you don't understand. Urasu smiled at him, but she also knew that it was impossible for her and Parker. The Spider-Man who attracted everyone's attention was not something she could have. Every time she thought of this, she felt sad, but fortunately, when Peter Parker was happy, she would be very happy too. She would watch every newspaper article about Spider-Man fighting criminals, but it was a pity that Peter Parker would no longer live in their house. Chapter 84. After finishing the call, Parker returned to the room and stared at the box containing the Venom suit in a daze. In the villa, Mary Jane took the elevator up. Harry had been waiting for a long time. After meeting, the two greeted each other. Are you hungry? Harry looked at Mary Jane with a smile. Yeah. Mary Jane nodded. Come on. Harry stretched his neck towards the kitchen. The two started cooking in the kitchen while playing music. Harry shouted to her, I hope you like chili. I like it very much. Harry smiled and turned up the volume of the music. The two began to sway to the rhythm. Mary Jane also improvised a dance. She walked towards Harry while dancing and pulled Harry to join in the dance. Harry couldn't resist her temptation and danced with her until Mary Jane smelled the burnt butter. Harry reacted and quickly poured the egg liquid in. Mary Jane helped him. Well done. Mary Jane praised. Harry wanted to show off his cooking skills in front of Mary Jane. Look at me. Then he tried to flip the eggs in the pan, but only caught half of them, and the rest fell to the ground. Mary Jane exclaimed and smiled at the remaining half of the fried egg. We can eat this part. At the table, Harry looked at Mary Jane and said, you have been dreaming. It's just self-deception to get through the long night. Mary Jane read the script Harry had written, but couldn't help laughing. Harry was also stunned by her laughter and laughed. When did you write it? Senior year. Super touching. Mary Jane praised. So do you want to play this role? I'm very honored to participate in your play. Mary Jane certainly wouldn't refuse, and Harry immediately said that she was accepted. After putting down the script, Mary Jane looked at the wound on Harry's forehead and found that there was no scar, and then reached out to touch the original wound. Harry stared at Mary Jane, who was close at hand. Mary Jane also found that Harry was looking at her intently and couldn't help but kiss him. After the kiss, Mary Jane realized what she had just done. She lowered her head and said, sorry. Harry immediately said, me too. She said again, I didn't mean it. No, it's okay. Please forgive me. Harry also knew that he had kissed Peter's girlfriend. Is this considered cheating on his good brother? Mary Jane didn't dare to stay here any longer, so she got up, picked up her clothes, and started to walk out, and Harry immediately followed her. Mary Jane, please. Harry didn't know what Mary Jane meant and wanted her to stay, but Mary Jane was determined to leave. Is she lacking love? Or what? Everyone couldn't understand what Mary Jane was thinking. She flirted with Harry for no reason, and then felt that she was wrong and ran away. The problem is that what should Harry do if this happens? Where does she put her boyfriend Peter? Kissing his good brother behind his back. Will they fight again because of Mary Jane? Pepper was a little worried that the two brothers had finally reconciled, but ended up fighting again because of Mary Jane. Who knows? Peter Parker kissed Gwen because of the fans' request, but what about her? She rekindled her old relationship with Harry for no reason. At this moment, Tony deeply understood why Cheyenne Moose said that Gwen was more suitable for Peter Parker. Even the landlord's daughter Ursu, she was better than Mary Jane. She really liked Peter Parker, unlike Mary Jane, who fell in love with everyone she met. For the first time, Harry felt that Mary Jane was a little strange. Although the person who cheated on him was him, he was forced to cheat on his good brother. How could he go to see Peter? He scratched his head involuntarily. Uncle Ben had seen from a long time ago that Mary Jane was not a woman that was so easy to satisfy, so he persuaded Peter not to be with Mary Jane. Fortunately, Peter Parker let go of his feelings for Mary Jane, which made him feel relieved. The people of the world who were watching also began to feel a little disgusted with Mary Jane. Mary Jane herself did not expect that she would do this in the sky, and for a while she did not know how to face Harry and Parker. Harry felt restless after kissing Mary Jane and could not help but take off his coat and start to drink himself. At this time, a strange voice suddenly sounded around. "You forgot your mission." Harry looked up at the portrait of Norman in front of him, and his mind was filled with many images suddenly flashed in his mind. The sudden pain made Harry avoid Norman's portrait involuntarily. He turned his head and saw himself in the mirror. He seemed to hear Norman's voice calling him, "Harry." He looked at himself in the mirror and couldn't help but walk forward to touch that self. Just when his fingers touched the mirror, he remembered the scene when Norman died. And the discovery that Peter was Spider-Man, and heard Norman's roar at the time, "Revenge for me." He remembered the scene when he fought with Peter and hit his head. He couldn't help but cover his head, and his conversation with Peter after waking up in the hospital echoed in his mind. The intense pain made Harry cover his head and lower it. He remembered that he swore to make Spider-Man pay with blood. When he raised his head, the person in the mirror had changed from himself to Norman. "Harry, do you remember me?" Norman looked at him seriously. "Yes, Dad, I remember." Harry's eyes began to turn red. "I was right about her and Peter. I didn't see anything wrong. You know you have to do something to make him suffer. Make him live a life worse than death." Harry slowly lowered his head while listening. "First, we have to attack his heart." At this point, Norman's voice has become the voice of the Green Goblin. Under the instigation of the Green Goblin, Harry's eyes gradually became fierce. "OMG. Harry." He remembered. "Will he and Peter kill each other again?" Aunt May exclaimed. "Harry can't hurt Peter, especially when he is wearing the Venom spider suit, but I can't think of how to stop the situation where they are fighting each other." Uncle Ben frowned. "It is because Peter is wearing the Venom spider suit that it is easy to do bad things. Don't forget that Cheyenne Moose said that he would watch his brother die." Aunt May certainly knew Parker's ability, and she was worried about another situation. "Yes, Peter Parker becomes evil after wearing Venom. He can kill Marco and Harry. Then he regrets it after taking off Venom. This is a very reasonable situation." After Aunt May's reminder, Uncle Ben imagined this situation and sighed again. He didn't want to see this situation. Nick Fury also thought of this situation. Judging from the previous battle between Peter Parker and Harry, the two were equally matched when Peter Parker didn't try his best. But if he put on Venom, the gap in strength between the two would widen again, and Peter Parker might be affected by Venom and be merciless to Harry. The possibility of accidentally killing Harry is definitely there. Chapter 85. Mary Jane returned home and heard the phone ring. It was Parker's phone message. "I want to talk to you about what happened last night. I don't know what I was thinking last night. I know you just want to help me, but I don't know how to say it. I want to see you." Mary Jane walked towards the phone. At this moment, a hand suddenly stretched out and grabbed her neck, lifted her up in the air, and then slammed her against the wall. With the help of the light outside, it turned out to be Harry who had recovered his memory. He stood on the glider and said to Mary Jane fiercely, "If you want Peter to live, you have to listen to me." Mary Jane looked at Harry with horror and strangeness. She had never thought that Harry had such a side. The scene changed, and they came to Parker's door. Urasu came over and knocked on Parker's door. Parker shouted, "Come in." Urasu took a lot of effort to open the door. After entering, she greeted Parker first. Parker was sitting on a chair looking at her. Urasu felt a little embarrassed for her rough door opening. After seeing Peter, Urasu couldn't help but be happy. "Hey, Urasu. I'm sorry for talking to you like that." Parker apologized to her, although he had already told the landlord once. "It's okay, you're a good person. There's a call for you. It's Mary Jane. She called you back." Urasu said he didn't care about it, and then told Parker very happily that Mary Jane called him back. "Really? Thank you." Parker stood up immediately, and Urasu walked in front of him. "I put the phone receiver over there." She pointed at the phone. Parker thanked her, and she went back to her room. "Hi." Mary Jane's calm voice came from the microphone, as if the thrilling scene just now had not happened. "Oh, I'm so glad you called me. I've been." Parker was interrupted by Mary Jane before he finished speaking. "Can you meet me?" Parker agreed without hesitation. Mary Jane asked him to meet her on the bridge in the park, and Parker promised to go there immediately. "I'm afraid this is a trap." Uncle Ben frowned. Harry grabbed Mary Jane and threatened her. There must be some ulterior motive. Aunt May couldn't help but worry after hearing this. She was also afraid that Parker and Harry would fight and accidentally kill one of them. Tony thought about it and guessed Harry's intention. Harry is probably forcing Mary Jane to break up with Peter Parker to make him feel depressed, which just happened to be in line with the Green Goblin's words, to attack his heart first. Parker came to the park with a bouquet of flowers in his hand and saw Mary Jane waiting for him on the bridge and walked over. Parker praised Mary Jane from a distance before he got close to her, saying, "You are so beautiful." Then he walked up to her and showed her the peony in his hand. Mary Jane looked at Parker anxiously, and Parker also found that Mary Jane seemed not very well, so he asked, "Are you okay?" "No. I have to tell you something, Peter." Parker didn't know what happened yet and looked at Mary Jane expectantly. "There is a problem in the relationship between you and me." Parker looked at her with confusion when he heard this and didn't understand what she meant for a while. "I don't want to see you again." "What are you talking about?" Parker asked in disbelief. He couldn't believe that Mary Jane was going to break up with him all of a sudden. "I don't know." Mary Jane shook her head, closed her eyes, and held back the tears in her eyes. "When I was lonely, you were not by my side. I can't stand it anymore. Our relationship is over." Although Mary Jane was coerced by Harry, this was also her true feelings in her heart, but she had suppressed them in her heart in the past. "No. Please don't say that. I know I have always been selfish, but I can do better. I can change." Parker tried to keep Mary Jane's heart with a sad face. "Things are not that simple," Mary Jane said with a double meaning. "We love each other. I love you. There are problems in our relationship, but when people encounter problems, they will find ways to solve them. Just talk it out." Mary Jane turned her head and covered her face, not knowing how to face Parker. Parker took out the ring from his trouser pocket and said, "Look, look." Mary Jane looked up helplessly and sighed. Parker held the ring and expressed his expectations for the two of them, but his last hope was shattered by Mary Jane. The words shattered. "I have someone else. I'm in love with someone else." Mary Jane said and left there, leaving Parker alone in a daze. Harry watched Parker standing on the bridge leave there in a daze from a distance, turned his head to look at Mary Jane who was walking by, and praised, "Well done. Harry succeeded. What's next?" "Harry, how are you going to take revenge on Spider-Man?" The damn fuck man looked at Harry's smug smile with his one eye, guessing his next move. Alas. Poor Peter Parker, being played around by others. Hill sighed, lamenting that it was not easy for Peter Parker, and even having a love relationship was full of twists and turns. "Harry is quite well planned. Peter, you have to pay more attention to the enemy's conspiracy, and don't let Gwen get hurt." George Stacy put down the cutlery, wiped the corners of his mouth, and warned Parker seriously. Parker nodded, saying that he would be careful. At this time, Venom came out of his trouser pocket and jumped onto the table. Everyone was immediately startled. Venom turned around and then jumped onto Gwen. Gwen stared blankly at Venom attached to her chest, turning into a black spider pattern, and then there was no movement. She looked at Parker. "Peter? I think it wants to say that it will protect you." Parker carefully felt Venom's thoughts and found that it simply wanted to protect Gwen. "Are you sure it won't hurt or affect Gwen?" George asked, picking up the knife that had just fallen. "Yeah." Parker was very sure. Seeing this, George didn't say anything more. After all, Cheyenne Moo said that it would not cause any more impact. Gwen touched the Venom on her chest. Venom stretched out its tentacles to hug her fingers and rub them, then retracted them. In the restaurant, Parker sat opposite Harry. He didn't know that Harry had recovered his memory and threatened Mary Jane to break up with him. She said she felt lonely, and I can't help her. She has a third party. Parker told Harry about Mary Jane breaking up with him. Harry exhaled a breath of turbid air, frowned and asked, "So how are you going to bear all this?" "Not very good." Parker sighed, admitting that he was very uncomfortable and in a very bad mood now. Then he said to Harry, "Harry, I was going to propose to her." "Really?" Harry was a little surprised that there was an unexpected surprise. "She has had a difficult time recently about her career. I mean, being a singer hostess in a jazz club is not the job she wants in her mind." "Singer hostess? What are you talking about?" Parker looked at Harry puzzled. He didn't know that Mary Jane was fired. "Ah, she was fired from the crew. Didn't she tell you?" Harry was also surprised that Parker didn't know about it. "She was fired? She was fired, and she told you? But she didn't tell me." Parker seemed to realize something and looked at Harry in confusion. Chapter 86. "Yes. That's why I asked you to come here, Peter. I'm the third party." Harry told Parker the news calmly. Parker found it hard to accept this and looked at Harry in shock. "What?" "One afternoon she came to me because she was in trouble. She needed someone to accompany her. I was by her side at that time. I have always loved her. Peter, you know this." "Naturally, it started." Parker looked at Harry with red eyes and couldn't believe that his good brother actually cheated on him. He couldn't accept it for a while and said, "I don't believe this is true. I don't believe you. I'm very sorry. I just thought you should know." Hearing him say this, Parker couldn't bear it anymore and left the restaurant directly. Leaving Harry alone in the restaurant enjoying the food, the waiter came over and poured him some hot coffee and asked, "How's this fruit pie?" Harry put a piece in his mouth and responded with satisfaction, "It's delicious." Parker felt something when he walked outside, turned his head to look at Harry in the restaurant, and Harry also turned his head and blinked at him with a wicked smile. Parker instantly realized that Harry had recovered his memory and was about to go back when he was blocked by a car. When the car passed, Harry had disappeared in the restaurant. Parker looked around and didn't see Harry, so he had to leave. "I guess they will definitely fight. Peter Parker won't just give up," Tony said to Pepper. Peter Parker has always had a good temper. He didn't wear the Venom spider suit, so he might not go to find Harry. Pepper thought for a while and said, "Then let's make a bet. Peter Parker will definitely wear the Venom spider suit." Tony was in high spirits and wanted to make a bet with Pepper. Pepper also agreed. As for the bet, they didn't need that thing. Parker, who had just returned home, saw Uncle Ben sitting on the sofa. Uncle Ben waved at him and motioned him to sit down. After Parker sat down, Uncle Ben asked, "What do you think the one in the sky thinks?" Parker opened his mouth. "I might think that Mary Jane broke up with me because Harry stole her, so I will go to Harry to settle the score." Even Parker couldn't stand this kind of cuckolding, not to mention that it was cuckolded by Harry, his good brother who wanted to kill him. Parker sat on the bed in a daze after returning to the room. His thoughts were exactly the same as what Parker said in reality. He slowly turned his gaze to the box containing Venom. He walked over to unlock it and opened it after hesitating for a second. The Venom suit in the box rose and fell slightly as if it had life, and Parker watched Venom pick it up. Harry poured himself a glass of wine in his villa and suddenly sensed someone coming. He curled his lips slightly. "Why did you take so long? Do you want to drink something?" He turned around and looked at Parker lying on the sofa. "Sorry, what was I thinking about? This is damaging to the public image, right? Mr. City Hero. You acted really well today." Parker lay on the sofa and looked at Harry. "Haha, it's not entirely acting. She did come to see me." Harry raised his hand and laughed. "I see. I like the direction of the plot." Parker got up from the sofa with a wicked smile, stood in front of Harry, and looked at him. "It's not as good as my love for Mary Jane's kiss." Harry smiled. "What did you do to her?" Stopping his smile, Parker's expression became a little scary as he stared at Harry while touching the Venom spider suit on his body with his hand. Harry took a sip of the wine in the glass. "I do what you didn't do. I'm by her side to relieve her loneliness. She doesn't know your true self." Parker retorted. "No, Peter. She knows me very well. When she kisses me, it's just like she used to kiss me. It tastes like..." Harry touched his lips, as if he was recalling his kiss with Mary Jane, "like strawberries." His words angered Parker, and he punched Harry hard. Harry had no time to react, and was hit back by Parker's consecutive punches, until he hit the pillar. Parker was pinching Harry's neck, and suddenly felt pain. It turned out that Harry took out a dagger from somewhere and stabbed Parker. Although Parker stopped him in time, when the bloody dagger was completely out of his body, he twisted it hard to remove the dagger from Harry's hand, but then 3 sharp blades popped out of Harry's arm. Parker was startled, and immediately lowered his body, to avoid Harry's backhand attack, then punched Harry hard, and then kicked him out directly. Harry hit the wooden cabinet, blood flowed from his mouth. Parker rushed up without mercy, and Harry swung the sharp blade on his arm at him with force. Parker hurriedly dodged his right hand's 2 consecutive swings, but was accidentally hit by his left fist. Harry took the opportunity to swing the blade at Parker, and he immediately raised his hand to hold Harry's arm. Harry also pressed his left hand up, trying to kill Parker with all his strength. Parker looked at the blade in front of him, and just as he was about to exert force, Harry took the initiative to punch him. Parker was hit against the pillar, and the 3 sharp blades on Harry's arm followed closely. Parker dodged in time, and the sharp blades pierced deeply into the pillar, and could not be pulled out for a while. Just as Harry tried hard to pull his hand out, Parker hit his arm with a knife, and the support that fixed the blade broke immediately, and the 3 knives were left on the pillar. Then Parker punched him again. When he wanted to punch him again, Harry grabbed Parker's wrist and kicked him out. "How does it feel, Spider-Man?" He looked at Parker and taunted. Parker got up from the ground and smiled at him evilly, saying, "Is this all you have?" Harry punched Parker on the head angrily, but Parker was not moved at all. Harry's other fist was easily held down by Parker, and then Parker kicked Harry directly out of the house and onto the balcony. Harry fell heavily on the ground for a while before he stabilized his body. He got up from the ground, touched the blood at the corner of his mouth, and looked at Parker in the room viciously. "It hurts, right?" Parker smiled at him inside. "I protected you in high school, now I want to teach you a lesson," Harry said fiercely. Parker pretended to be frightened by Harry's words. Harry rushed up, but Parker easily hugged his body and threw him against the glass window on the other side. Then he punched him a few times. Harry tried his best to dodge. The glass behind him was broken by Parker, but in the end Parker knocked him aside with an elbow. Then he grabbed Harry's collar and threw him out fiercely. Harry hit the railing and floor of the 2nd floor heavily, and then fell to the ground. Chapter 87. Parker looked at Harry with an angry face, and Harry also looked at him with a ferocious face, and then rushed towards Parker like a beast. Parker was naturally not afraid of him, and rushed towards Harry. The 2 collided with each other, but it was obvious that Parker was stronger than Harry, and was pushed by Parker, and broke the glass into the secret room. Harry saw that he could not defeat Parker with his bare hands, so he immediately started to rush into the secret room, and Parker followed closely. He took a knife from the knife rack, turned around and chopped at Parker. Parker dodged repeatedly, and Harry accidentally chopped the computer that controlled the hang glider. The hang glider immediately lost control and flew around the house. The 2 of them lowered their bodies to avoid the hang glider at the same time. Harry saw the opportunity and immediately swung the knife. Parker first lowered his head to avoid the first knife, then jumped up to avoid his second knife. At the same time, he noticed that the hang glider was flying towards them, and took advantage of the situation to grab Harry's clothes, to make him lose balance and push him up. At this time, Harry realized that the glider was close at hand. He had no time to react, and was hit by the glider, which immediately knocked him onto the cabinet of the Green Goblin bomb. The glass cabinet exploded directly, and all the Green Goblin bombs fell to the ground. Harry struggled to get up from the ground, and asked Parker, who came to him, "Are you going to kill me, like you killed my father? I won't try to make you believe anything again." Parker shook his head at him. "You took him away from me. He loves me very much." Harry looked at him with heavy breath. "No. He looks down on you. You make him lose face. Oh, look at you, little Green Goblin. Are you going to cry?" Parker laughed at Harry. Harry was angered by him, and got up from the ground, and wanted to attack Parker again, but Parker knocked him to the ground with a strong palm. Looking at Harry lying on the ground, Parker decided to leave here. but Harry was unwilling to lose to Parker. He saw a green goblin bomb at hand, picked it up, activated it and threw it at Parker. How sensitive is Parker's spider sense? He dodged Harry's sneak attack by tilting his head, then stretched out his hand to shoot spider silk, stuck to the bomb, pulled it back, and threw it at Harry. Harry looked at the green goblin bomb flying towards him in horror. His eyes unconsciously followed it, listened to its beep sound, and watched it explode in front of his eyes. With a bang, Harry was directly submerged in the dust produced by the explosion, and Parker left here without looking back. Will Harry die just like this? A citizen looked at this scene with a little worry. Brothers fighting is the most painful thing. I don't know, I hope not. God bless. A woman put her hands together and prayed. Spider-Man has also suffered this kind of injury, but his physical strength is extremely high, and the Green Goblin bomb did not pose a fatal threat to him. But Harry is different. If he is hit in the face by the explosion, he may die. Parker also looked at Harry's position with worry. Gwen couldn't help but hold his hand. Feeling the warmth from Gwen's palm, he turned his head and glanced at Gwen. Gwen smiled at him gently. Don't worry, this only happened without the sky curtain. You and Harry are good friends, and you won't kill each other. I know, but it's still a bit uncomfortable to see this scene. I'm fine, don't worry. Parker patted her hand. After making Harry pay the price, Parker completely let himself go, began to wear Venom all the time, and combed himself a new hairstyle. He walked to the road and suddenly saw a newspaper on the side of the road, which reported that Spider-Man wearing Venom stole a bag of money. There was a big headline underneath, "Thief. Spider-Man reveals his true colors." Passers-by nearby were looking at today's latest newspapers. Spider-Man always made me feel safe in the past, but now I don't dare to walk home after get off work. A white old man next to the lady who was talking also said, "My son used to admire this guy very much. My 9-year-old daughter loves Spider-Man very much. Who should she admire now?" A black guy was also angry. "Is this the city hero they promote?" The woman questioned whether Spider-Man was really a city hero. Parker listened to what they said and saw the signature on the newspaper that said it was taken by Eddie Brock. "I'm going to sprinkle some dust in your eyes." He stared at Eddie's signature, and the blackened him was ready to put some eye drops on Eddie without any hesitation. Peter Parker won't let him go. This Eddie is going to fall bad luck. So the words "I'm going to throw some dust in your eyes," said by the narrator, before came from here. Tony immediately realized that Eddie was in big trouble. The current Peter Parker was not the same as before. It was hard to say what he would do after wearing Venom. Peter Parker is kind in nature. He didn't want to kill Harry. Harry asked for it. Coulson suddenly came to visit today, and Tony talked to him about Harry. Coulson told him that their people thought Harry would be disfigured, but unlikely to die. At most, he would be seriously injured. I knew it, otherwise it would not match the narrator's words that Peter Parker watched his good brother die in front of him. Could they reconcile later, and then Harry was beaten to death by others? Tony suddenly thought of it. Generally, Hollywood movies are shot like this. Coulson shrugged and indicated that he didn't know, but he felt that Tony had some truth. But he came here today to tell Tony something else. The day before yesterday, a Russian oil drilling team found a frozen plane in Antarctica. They reported it to the military, and the military found a very special existence inside. After learning about it, Coulson couldn't wait to share the news with Tony. In the Daily Bugle, everyone was celebrating Ed as becoming the new photographer of the newspaper. Eddie hypocritically said that he was just lucky. A blonde beauty looked at Eddie with great favor and praised him for being amazing. Eddie helped her fill her glass. "Please give me more wall space, Mr. Zan." Hearing this, the beauty smiled. Eddie put down the wine in his hand and hung up the report that slandered Spider-Man. Parker's figure was reflected in the white glass. Eddie saw him. "Wow. Good morning. What a nice weather today, right?" Eddie raised his eyebrows at Parker and said proudly, "What did you say? I would never take that photo. This is your hero." He raised his thumb and pointed back at the report, looking like a villain who had achieved success. Chapter 88. Parker shook his head. The smile on his face did not change at all. "I never thought he was really like that. See? Right there. You are biased. You have to believe the facts you see." Eddie pointed at Parker and asked him to recognize his position. "It's funny that you said that, because I browsed some old photos and saw this photo. It looks familiar." Parker reached out and touched the venom suit on his body, and his eyes gradually changed. Eddie saw the change in Parker's eyes and felt a burst of tension. He knew what the photo was about. So he quickly said to Parker, "Okay, I have to get back to work." Eddie suppressed his inner panic and pretended to be calm. Parker looked at Eddie and said, "You are so useless, Brock." "What?" Eddie looked at Parker pretending to know nothing. Parker threw the evidence in front of him. "Your photo is fake." "Oh. Parker, don't be so childish. When will you forgive others?" Eddie's words completely angered Parker, who was already full of anger. He directly grabbed Eddie by his collar and pushed him against the wall behind him. The movement of the two attracted the attention of Nairobi and Brent and others in the newspaper. Parker stared at Eddie viciously. "You want forgiveness? Let's go to the church." Robbie ran over. "What happened here?" Miss Brent also came over and asked, "Are you alright?" Seeing that everyone was watching, Eddie didn't want them to know about this and smiled and said to them, "Yes, it's okay. We were just joking." Then he begged Parker in a low voice, "I beg you, if you tell me, I will lose everything. No newspaper will hire me anymore." Eddie wanted to play the emotional card with Parker. If it was a normal Peter Parker, he might choose to just tell Jameson secretly and let him fire Eddie. But at this time he was in a black state, and he didn't care about Eddie's life or death. In his opinion, this was Eddie's own death, and he deserved to be spurned. "You should have thought of this consequence a long time ago." Hearing Parker's words, Eddie's face was very ugly. "Peter, what are you doing?" Robbie looked at Parker in confusion. "Show this to your editor and tell him to check the source of the photo next time." Parker stuffed the evidence to Robbie and left directly. After Robbie and Brent looked at the evidence carefully, Robbie looked up at Eddie with anger in his eyes. Miss Brent smiled. Compared with Eddie, she liked Peter Parker more. Soon after, in the office of Spider-Man 1.5, "This is a fake." The New York Photographic Association confirmed that this is a composite photo. Jameson compared the two photos. His inner anger was burning. He slammed the photo on the table and looked at Eddie with murderous eyes. "Get out of here." Eddie waited for the trial with an uneasy look. After hearing Jameson's words, he wanted to defend himself. "I just want. You are fired." Before he could finish, Jameson interrupted him angrily. Hearing this, Eddie had to turn around and leave the Daily Bugle. The editor reminded Jameson, "Now we have to publish an apology and withdraw the photo." Spider-Man 1.5 became even more furious after hearing this. "I haven't published an apology for 20 years. Then there was a statement from the Daily Bugle apologizing to Spider-Man, and also a report that Eddie, the fraudulent photographer, was fired by the Daily Bugle. The crowd of onlookers stared at the sky curtain angrily, their faces full of disgust and anger. In the crowd, an old man waved his cane angrily and shouted, "This Eddie Brock is simply a shameless person. How could he do such a thing, to discredit our hero Spider-Man?" A young man next to him also echoed, "That's right, Spider-Man has always been protecting the city. He is our hero. And this Eddie Brock, for his own selfish interests, did not hesitate to forge photos to discredit him." As more and more people joined the ranks of condemning Eddie Brock, major media also began to report on Eddie's fraud and severely denounced his behavior. People said that they were very disappointed and angry about Eddie Brock's behavior, and they hoped to see him get the punishment he deserved. Eddie felt that he woke up, and the sky fell inexplicably. He could already imagine that his future would be bleak, and his life was ruined. Whether Peter Parker in the sky curtain forgave him or not, it would not affect people in reality to see his true face. He stood there in despair, and people around him pointed at him, and even children passing by spit at him. Eddie didn't know where to stay in the world. People all over the world recognized his face. Even if he changed his name, it would be useless, unless he had plastic surgery. He couldn't help but start to hate the sky curtain. If it wasn't for the sky curtain exposing his behavior, he wouldn't have such an end, but he forgot that it was his own fault. After dealing with Eddie's affairs, Parker felt more relaxed than ever. He couldn't help waving his hands while walking on the street, and he looked very coquettish. That day he was talking and laughing with Urasu, and she was looking at him with a plate of cookies. At this time, the phone rang, and Parker picked it up, and Dr. Connor's voice came from it. "Oh, Dr. Connors, how are you?" Hearing his voice, Parker greeted him. "The experimental sample you left me last time is amazing, Parker. Its chemical composition is completely different from the chondrites in the 1970s. Connors continued to test the venom while speaking. Parker was not interested in listening to Connors. He was busy flirting with Urasu, took a cookie, and put it in his mouth, telling Urasu that it was delicious. Urasu was very happy to be praised. "You know what, Parker?" "Parker?" Connors didn't get a reply from Parker, so he called him again, and Parker answered the phone while asking Urasu to help him get a glass of milk. He will strengthen the characteristics of the host, especially in terms of aggression. Connors wanted to emphasize the seriousness of the venom to Parker, but Parker didn't care at all and continued to let Urasu feed him cookies. Connors watched the venom attacking the surrounding cells crazily under the microscope. His expression was very solemn. "This will be very dangerous. Peter, you didn't keep any of it?" Connors was afraid that Parker would be infected, but it was too late. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 89. Do you have nut cookies? Parker whispered to Urus. "Yes, I can try to bake some." Urus doesn't know how to make them, but she is willing to learn for Parker. "Then go and bake some for me," Parker instructed. Connors, who hadn't received a reply for a long time, couldn't help but call him again. "Peter? No. 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 Of course not." Parker quickly replied to Dr. Connors. Of course he didn't want Connors to know that he was wearing venom, so he lied to cover it up. Anyone who has experienced venom will find it difficult to get rid of that wonderful feeling. Even Parker is no exception. This girl is so good. Even if she can't do it, she is willing to learn for Peter Parker. This girl is no better than Mary Jane. Many people still like this kind of girl. In comparison, Mary Jane is nothing but Parker's first love. As the Sky Curtain was broadcast, Urasu also became famous. Many people wanted to go on a blind date with her. After all, it was rare to find a girl who only cared about you. Landlord Dajkovic received more than 100 blind date invitations in just one day, and some people even came to his house to propose marriage with candles. He was completely numb. Parker walked on the street in a very coquettish manner, snapping his fingers at the beauties passing by, and the beauties passing by turned their heads to look at him more. He came to the Daily Bugle, and Miss Brent praised him face to face at close range. "The photos you took are really great. I'd love to have you be my model," Parker teased Brent. Hearing his words, Miss Brent turned her head away shyly to avoid looking at him. "Peter Parker. Peter." When she turned around, the distance between the two was even closer, and they were just a little bit away from kissing. But the ambiguous atmosphere between the two was destroyed by Spider-Man 1.5. Who walked into the office from outside and shouted, "Parker, Miss Brent, I didn't hire you for that." Robbie followed him and saw the photos on the table at a glance. He exclaimed, "Spider-Man in black suit. Peter, these are incredible. Jonah, we need these photos." After hearing what Robbie said, Jameson wanted to buy the photos at the old price, but Parker shook his hair. "If you want these photos, you have to officially hire me. Double the price." Hearing Parker's words, the expression on Jameson's face changed slightly. Parker sat down on his chair, took a candy, and put it in his mouth, and put his legs on the table. Robbie and Brent outside were very surprised to see Parker, who exuded a different aura than usual. 1.5 Generation looked at Parker's feet on his desk, then looked at Parker's face to make sure he had recognized the right person, then looked down at his feet, couldn't help blinking, and began to lose confidence. Having successfully obtained the result he wanted, Parker walked on the street again, constantly waving gestures at the beauties on the street, and also improvised a move to the two women walking behind him, scaring the two to stop. After a 360-degree rotation, he walked into a suit shop full of discount labels, and after a while he walked out of it wearing a suit. He started dancing at the door of the suit shop, and people passing by were watching him, but the Black and Parker didn't care what others thought of him. Ha 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 ha. Doesn't he feel embarrassed? A citizen was amused by the Black and Parker, and had a stomach chash. Dancing on the street was something he really couldn't do. You danced very well. Spider-Man, I love you. A beautiful girl boldly expressed her love, but passers-by were used to it. This kind of thing happens every day. I thought he was very good before, but now he looks a bit like a fool. Rod couldn't help but complain as he watched Parker dancing awkwardly on the dome. The pirated Spider-Man is doubting his life. I think he might even suspect that Peter Parker is someone else's fake. Tony laughed at Parker's awkward dance and thought of Jameson's expression and laughed again. Don't mention him. Even Robbie and Miss Brand were surprised. Rod couldn't help laughing. No wonder the narrator said that Peter Parker was very kind. He actually only did these things after he turned evil. Others turned evil to destroy the world, but Peter Parker turned evil and asked the black-hearted boss to give him a raise and let him become a regular employee. He also ran to the street to tease girls. What kind of villain could think of this? Shouldn't he press Jameson to the ground and rub him? Peter Parker dancing awkwardly on the street. The report soon became the new front page headline, and every citizen who saw it couldn't help laughing. Gwen was also amused by the Black and Peter Parker, and Parker felt that he could dig out a 3-bedroom apartment with his toes next to her. At night, at the exit of the sewer, some water-soaked sand flowed out from it, and the calm water surface began to ripple, surging with countless bubbles. Then, on the land by the river, a mass of sand rose up, then changed into a human shape, and then turned into the appearance of Marco. He looked at the photo in his hand, and muttered his daughter's name. He just wanted to see his daughter at this time after escaping death. The next morning, Marco's wife and her daughter Penny were sitting in the park looking at the Manhattan River. She held Penny's hair and said to her, "Baby, look at me. I know your dad promised you something, but sometimes he can't always do what he promised. I know that there seems to be something that always hinders him. I just don't want you to have too high hopes. He will break your heart." Penny looked at her mother, and her heart was also a little sad. "Go get your things, okay?" Penny leaned on her crutches and slowly stood up from the chair. She wanted to get her things. The next second, she saw something surprising on the beach not far away. She couldn't help but walk over there. It turned out to be a castle made of sand. Penny walked to the castle and looked at the castle that was much taller than her. Penny put down her crutches and reached out to touch the castle. The touch in her hand made her understand that this was a real thing, not her illusion. She happily put both hands on it, feeling the sense of security brought to her by the castle that suddenly appeared, and couldn't help but lean her head on it, as if she was leaning on her father. "Penny, let's go," her mother called out from behind. Penny answered and got up to walk towards her mother. Halfway through, she turned around and found that the castle had disappeared without a trace. After the mother and daughter left, Marco appeared at the castle. Looking at the two of them leaving, he said silently, "I promise you, he won't stop me again." Marco is not dead yet, and it looks like he is determined to get rid of Peter. George Stacy frowned. He didn't expect Marco to be so alive and could gather again after being dispersed. It doesn't matter. Peter is now possessed by venom. Although his personality has changed, his combat power has really improved. Gwen believes that Parker will definitely defeat Marco. George glanced at his daughter, who was full of confidence in Peter Parker, and sighed again that it was really hard to keep a girl when she grows up. Chapter 90. At night, Peter Parker, who didn't know that Marco was determined to kill him, invited Gwen to a nightclub. "You really should come to the bar here to play." Parker led the way in front, and Gwen asked as she walked behind him, "Do you think I'm dressed too formally? Are you kidding? You look great, baby." The Black and Parker praised Gwen without hesitation. "Thank you." Gwen was very happy with Parker's praise. "I like your laugh." The two walked farther and farther, not noticing Eddie behind them. Eddie looked at Gwen, who was walking farther and farther away from Parker, and his hatred for Peter Parker became deeper and deeper. As soon as he entered the bar, Gwen couldn't help but exclaimed, "Oh, this is so cool. I've never been to a jazz bar." Parker saw Mary Jane entertaining guests from the crowd, and a wicked smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Gwen took a quick look and found that there were a lot of people, but she didn't see Mary Jane behind the crowd. "Oh, I hope we can find a table." Hearing his words, Parker whistled at the beautiful waitress next to him and whispered in her ear, "Find us a table." "Thank you, Miss Beautiful Legs." At the same time, he stuffed a tip into her hand. The beautiful woman who received the tip was in a good mood and asked them to follow her. She directly gave the seat reserved by others to Parker and Gwen. Parker helped Gwen pull out the chair very gentlemanly. Gwen said thank you very politely and sat down. After sitting down together, Parker said, "I really like this place." After hearing Parker's words, Gwen also agreed very much, "Me too." At this time, Mary Jane passed by the two of them. Gwen saw her and turned around to look at Parker with a little surprise. "Isn't that your ex-girlfriend?" Parker nodded. "Do you want to go somewhere else?" Gwen was worried that Parker's meeting with Mary Jane would affect her mood, but she didn't know that the evil Peter Parker wanted to use her to anger Mary Jane. "Oh, no, I'm fine," Parker said nonchalantly. At this time, the bar owner asked Mary Jane to perform on stage and show her skills to the guests. Mary Jane ran onto the stage to prepare for singing. Parker glanced at Gwen beside him, rolled his eyes, and said to her, "I'll be back soon." Gwen nodded. Mary Jane on the stage was about to speak when she suddenly heard the sound of the piano. She turned around and found that it was Parker and asked in confusion, "Peter?" After playing the piano for a few times, Parker said to Mary Jane, "This song is dedicated to you." Gwen in the audience was checking her MacUp while Parker was away. She didn't want to embarrass him in front of Parker's ex-girlfriend. Suddenly saw Parker playing the piano and put away the MacUp mirror in surprise. Parker shouted, "Speed up the pace," and jumped onto the piano. Then he stepped onto the bar counter in front of everyone's surprised eyes, grabbed a glass from someone, and drank it all in one gulp. Then he jumped up, grabbed the chandelier on the top, and threw the empty glass to someone else. After swinging back, he began to slide on the chair, and the people watching the fun made way for him. He started dancing again with the chair, then kicked the chair away, and continued to dance in front of Mary Jane. Mary Jane looked at Peter Parker a little at a loss, thinking that he was suddenly very strange. The Parker in the past would not do this. Then he walked and danced towards Gwen, took off his coat, and a gust of wind was raised, and Gwen's hair was blown up by the wind. He threw his coat to Mary Jane on the stage, and Mary Jane subconsciously dodged it, and then continued to look at Parker in confusion. Parker suddenly muttered to himself inexplicably, "Watch me." Then he continued his dance, began to snap his fingers and sway his body back and forth, and then walked towards Gwen, inviting her to dance with him. Mary Jane looked at the two people dancing intimately in the audience, and her heart was extremely uneasy. After the dance ended, Parker did not look at Gwen, but looked up at Mary Jane. Gwen realized that something was wrong at this time, and quickly turned her head to see Mary Jane on the stage. She turned her head to look at Parker again, and found that he was still staring at Mary Jane, and asked disappointedly, "You did all this for her?" Parker's lack of answer was the best answer. Gwen looked at him sadly, came to Mary Jane, and said to her, "I'm sorry," and left directly. Mary Jane also shook her head in disappointment and walked away, leaving Parker touching his chest involuntarily. She came to the bar, and her colleague walked up to her and asked, "Are you okay, Mary Jane?" Mary Jane forced a smile, and said that she was fine. After hearing her words, her colleague left. Parker walked behind her, and said to her, "Hey." Mary Jane turned her head, and looked at him, puzzled. "What are you crazy about?" Parker stared at her and said, "You." The bar star saw that the two were not in a good situation, and immediately intervened and said, "Is there anything I can do for you?" "No." Parker glanced at him. A tall man came over from behind. "Is everything okay here, Paul?" "Yes, everything is okay here, Paul." Parker looked at him and repeated. Paul looked at the man next to him unceremoniously. "Get him out." Hearing this, the man held Parker's arm. "Let's go, sir." The blackened Parker felt the man's hand and said in a bad tone, "Take your dirty hands away." Hearing Parker's words, the man grabbed Parker's arm with his other hand even more rudely. Parker broke free from his hand in an instant and slammed him against the wall by his collar. Seeing this, everyone in the bar tried to dissuade him. Hey, let go. Two security guards stepped forward and tried to hug Parker's neck to separate the two. Parker pushed them away with a slight force. Mary Jane rushed over to stop Parker. Peter, stop. But Parker, who had completely turned black, didn't care about that. He slapped Mary Jane to the ground with his backhand. Mary Jane lay on the ground and looked at him disappointedly. Seeing Mary Jane lying on the ground, Parker regained his sanity. Who are you? Mary Jane asked him disappointedly. This was not the gentle and kind Peter Parker she knew. The strange man in front of her frightened her. I don't know either. Parker didn't know what was wrong with him. Why did he do such a thing? Suddenly he remembered Kana's words and realized that the venom affected him. He covered his chest and hurriedly left the bar, leaving Mary Jane there. Chapter 91. Next time Peter comes, tell him not to take Gwen to that kind of place. George Stacy said to his wife lightly. Okay, I don't think Peter will take Gwen there casually. That's not normal for him. I know, but I still have to take precautions. George nodded. He knew Parker's character, but he was too crazy in the sky. Oh, so Peter Parker lost Gwen just like that? Venom. You are damned. Tony knew that Peter Parker just wanted to piss off Mary Jane. But then Peter Parker suddenly muttered to himself, which made Tony have to suspect that it was Venom who controlled Peter Parker. Otherwise it would be unreasonable. Gwen danced with him happily, but Parker just used her as a tool, which made Gwen give up on Parker directly. Pepper put herself in his shoes and thought that if it was her good impression of Parker would instantly be zero and even negative. Parker himself sighed. Gwen leaned on him and suddenly asked, will you take me to such a place? No. How could I take you there for no reason? Parker shook his head. He was two different people when he was normal and when he turned evil. Countless citizens also sighed that Spider-Man missed Gwen. Due to the lag in the news, they could not know in real time that Parker had actually been dating Gwen. When he came to the outside of the bar, Parker thought about what he had done in recent days, and he realized that it was not himself at all. It happened that the bells in the church in the distance rang at this time. Parker followed the bells and saw the church in the rainy night. He came to the top of the church. Reflecting on what he should do in the rain, after thinking for a long time, Parker looked at his black Venom spider suit and made up his mind. He fell into the church, where there was a huge bell, and what Parker didn't know was that Eddie also came to the church at this time. Parker asked him to go to the church to ask for forgiveness, and he really came, but not to ask for forgiveness. He dipped his finger in the water tank and made the sign of the cross. The church at night was empty except for the priest on duty, and the seats were empty. Lord Brock, Eddie Brock, I come before you today with a humble and humiliating heart to ask you for one thing. Eddie's eyes were red and he choked up and said his request, I want you to kill Peter Parker. In his heart, Peter Parker was his biggest obstacle and his biggest enemy. He ruined his reputation. Even if he went to hell, he wanted to drag Parker down with him. At the same time, Parker in the church began to tear Venom apart. He grabbed Venom with all his strength and tried to tear it off his body. But Venom would not just sit there and wait to die. It tried hard to stay on Peter Parker because this was the most perfect host it had ever seen. Parker tried his best and accidentally hit the big bell beside him. The bell stimulated the Venom so much that it revealed its true form directly from Parker. Eddie in the church heard the bell and Peter Parker shouting. He turned his head and looked at the wooden door beside him. With the help of the bell, Parker finally tore open the Venom that was wrapped around his head. Eddie listened to the increasingly loud shouting and the continuous bell and pushed open the wooden door. He looked up and saw Parker in a black spider suit. At this time, Parker was still tearing the Venom with all his strength and did not notice the figure below. Parker? Eddie looked up in disbelief. He had never thought that Peter Parker was actually Spider-Man. No wonder Spider-Man only wanted him to take pictures. It turned out to be himself. Parker took great effort to tear off some of the venom on one arm, and then he began to tear off the venom on his chest. Eddie was watching from below, and a drop of venom fell on his coat and immediately began to spread. Eddie quickly took off his coat and threw it aside. The bells kept ringing, and Parker successfully tore off most of the venom on his body. Although the venom tried desperately to continue to possess Parker, it also knew that it was not that easy. Because a drop of venom fell on Eddie, the venom felt the hatred and anger in him, so he became the best target for the venom. The venom began to take the initiative to break away from Peter Parker and quickly went towards Eddie below. A drop of venom fell first, and Eddie subconsciously blocked it with his hand. Then the venom began to entangle him crazily, and Eddie tried to shake it off, but the venom itself immediately grabbed him, and Eddie screamed in horror. Parker above was lying on the ground exhausted, unable to care about AI Eddie. Eddie was suspended in the air, and more venom fell on him. He was gradually covered by venom, and the venom entered his body from his mouth, and then he put it down. Eddie, who was lying on the ground, felt very disgusted and wretched, but soon he felt a powerful force of venom surging in his body. He showed a trace of evil smile, and now he had the capital to retaliate against Parker, and then he was completely covered by venom, and turned into an ugly monster. Oh, did you see it, Jarvis? Tony watched Peter Parker tearing venom apart. I saw it, sir. Venom seems to be afraid of high decibel sounds. Jarvis immediately analyzed why Parker could tear venom apart. Okay. I want to add sonic weapons to my armor, which the military used to use against the green big guy. Tony immediately decided to add another function to the armor. It's terrible. Aunt May looked at Venom with some horror. Peter will be in trouble now. Marco and that Teddy both want Peter to die. If the two join forces, Peter may really be killed by them. Uncle Ben frowned, and at the same time he was sighing in his heart that it was not easy for superheroes. There were too many enemies. This Eddie is really guilty. He didn't know his fault after being exposed by others, and he cursed others. Doesn't he deserve it? Rose looked at Eddie in the sky with dissatisfaction. Otto shrugged helplessly. There will always be such people who blame their mistakes on others, but I wonder what will happen to Eddie in reality? Recently, there are a lot of negative news about Eddie. I'm worried that he may retaliate against Peter's family when he is desperate. I have to strengthen the police force to protect them. George Stacy put down the newspaper in his hand, which was reporting about Eddie's life trajectory. The sky showed him trying to retaliate against Peter Parker again, which made him very worried. Mrs. Stacy also agreed with his opinion. She had visited Uncle Ben and Aunt May and had a good chat with them. Naturally, she didn't want anything to happen to them, and Eddie felt that he was hopeless. From now on, he would be completely reduced to a street rat because he was still unrepentant in the sky, and even his parents didn't want to see him again. Eddie hated Peter Parker very much. He wanted to destroy everything about him, but now he was powerless and couldn't even retaliate against his family because the police had been sending people to protect Uncle Ben and Aunt May. Chapter 92. Parker returned to his rental house and was taking a shower, thinking about his mistakes. After taking a shower, Parker sat by the windowsill and closed his eyes. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Parker didn't want to pay attention to it, but when the knock on the door sounded again, he reluctantly got up from the ground and opened the door. Because he was in a bad mood, Parker's control of his strength was not so accurate. He directly removed the door handle. Parker, who reacted, hurriedly and carefully opened the door. It was Aunt May outside the door. She greeted "Hi, Peter." Parker responded and invited Aunt May into the house. After Aunt May came in, she began to look around Parker's room. "It seems that you haven't changed your room much. Of course, there is nothing you can change, right?" As she spoke, she walked into the room. Parker tried to insert the door handle back, but the door handle on the other side fell off. Parker could only close the door temporarily. Aunt May sat on his bed and told him why she came. "When we were on the phone, I felt that you were worried, so I decided to come and see. Is Mary Jane okay?" Parker stood by the window with his back to Aunt May. He didn't know how to tell her, so he could only say that he didn't know. Aunt May was slightly dissatisfied when she heard Parker's words. "I haven't heard from you. Have you proposed to her?" Parker shook his head slightly. turned around and walked to Aunt May and said, "You said a husband needs to think about his wife." He handed her the ring Aunt May gave him, and Aunt May reached out to take it. "I'm not ready yet." Aunt May touched the ring in her hand, not understanding what happened. Why did she suddenly change her mind? But what happened? Are you so sure? Yeah. Parker hesitated and turned to the window again, to look out the window. "I hurt her, Aunt May. I don't know what to do." Parker looked lost. He regretted what he had done. He hurt Gwen and Mary Jane at the same time. He had lost their hearts. Then start with the most difficult part. Don't blame yourself. I trust you. Peter. You are a good person. I believe you will find a way to solve the problem. Aunt May encouraged Parker, then put the ring on the table beside her, and then added, "And solve it in time." Then she left the room. On the other side, a black figure in the night sky passed through the air and came to an alley, but was suddenly knocked to the ground by another figure. Spider-Man. Die. Marco grabbed the black shadow viciously and was about to punch it, but Venom's terrifying face was obviously not Spider-Man. Marco was stunned for a moment and threw Venom away. Venom climbed up the wall and said to Marco, "I want him to die too." Flint. Marco, who was about to leave, stopped after hearing this and turned to look at Venom. "So I've been looking for you. Oh, by the way, I know everything about you. It seems that Spider-Man doesn't let you help your poor daughter. In my opinion, this is too hateful." Venom slowly crawled towards him on the wall like Spider-Man, and then revealed Eddie's face inside. "Listen, I want to kill Spider-Man, and you also want to kill this spider. If we join forces, he will definitely die. Are you interested?" When he came in front of Marco, Venom wrapped Eddie up again, because Eddie was also afraid that Marco would suddenly attack him. Fortunately, everything went as he imagined. Marco nodded without hesitation. "Yeah. Oh. Parker is in big trouble." Jameson looked at the two people working together. It was difficult to deal with them alone, let alone the two working together. The only way is to use the weakness of one of them to defeat one, and then go all out to deal with the other. Robbie said the only way he could think of. Spider-Man 1.5 nodded. Even a fool would know this, but Marco and Eddie were not fools. They would definitely not be divided and defeated. Parker came to Mary Jane's house and saw Mary Jane's busy figure from the window. I don't know what she was thinking, and tears gradually accumulated in her eyes. He closed his eyes to prevent the tears from flowing down, lowered his head and left there. Just after he left, Mary Jane looked up and looked out the window, but unfortunately Parker was gone. Mary Jane went downstairs and took a taxi to go to work. As soon as she got in the car, she saw the driver turned his head and looked at him. It was Eddie. Eddie smiled at Mary Jane and said, "So, where are we going?" At that moment, a black terrifying hand pinched Mary Jane's cheek. News in New York City. Hell fishermen began to report on this hostage kidnapping case. All New Yorkers hold their breath and pay attention to the progress of the hostage incident. A taxi was hung above the construction site. A reporter at the scene was reporting the incident. About half an hour ago, the police came to this amazing scene. A young woman who was held hostage in a taxi was suspended 80 stories above the ground. Hell fishermen also said, the scene looks like a huge spider web. All the police's attempts to rescue the hostages were stopped by the Sandman. The camera showed a scene of Marco overturning all the police cars. There was also a strange man in black involved. Early reports believed that he was Spider-Man in black, but now he has been confirmed to be a completely different individual. Looking at the terrifying big mouth of Venom with fangs in the picture, everyone on the scene felt suffocated. Parker immediately realized that it was Venom that had separated from him. He was exhausted at the time. When he recovered, Venom and Eddie had disappeared without a trace. The hostages confirmed to be Mary Jane Watson, an actress who once performed on Broadway. Seeing that the hostage was Mary Jane, Parker immediately realized that this was aimed at him and immediately left the TV, returned home, and took out the red and blue spider suit that he had not worn for a long time. "We will take you to the scene now." Reporter Jennifer is at the scene. "Jennifer?" Hell Fishman switched the camera to the scene. "We are about 100 feet away from the scene. Wait. There seems to be movement on the spider web. Huge words are woven on it." Dugan Jennifer reported in the chaotic scene. As the camera moved up, the audience in front of the TV clearly saw the letters on it. Spider-Man. If you have the guts, come and stop us. We have to face a serious question. That is, facing such an unstoppable challenge, what are his chances of winning? Chapter 93. Harry looked at Mary Jane, who was sticking her head out of the car, turned off the TV, touched his forehead, and looked at the portrait of Norman. At this time, Parker's voice sounded, "Harry." He turned his head and looked at Parker in the spider suit. "I need your help. I can't beat the two of them, not alone." Hearing his words, Harry turned his head completely, revealing the other half of his cheek. Looking at Harry, who was disfigured and blinded in one eye, Parker felt very regretful. "You don't deserve my help." Harry rejected Parker without hesitation. He thought it was good that he didn't join in the siege of Parker. "Harry, she needs us." Parker wanted to use Mary Jane to persuade Harry, but unfortunately Harry was unmoved. "Get out." Hearing Harry's words, Parker turned around and left here in disappointment. Even if he was alone, he would go to save Mary Jane. Harry turned his head and saw the photo of the three of them in high school placed in the living room and couldn't help but shed tears. He came to the secret room, where there was no time to clean up, and the chaotic scene after the fight with Parker remained the same. He picked up a knife on the ground, and Bernard appeared behind him. "If I can say it, sir." Hearing the butler's voice, Harry looked up at him. "I saw a lot of things that happened in this room, but I never said it. What do you want to tell me?" Harry looked at Bernard in confusion. "The night your father died, I cleaned his wounds. The blade that pierced his body came from his glider. I know you tried to defend your father's honor, but there is no doubt that he died in his own hands." Hearing Bernard's words, Harry also remembered that Parker had said again and again that he was not the one who killed his father, but he always didn't believe it. Bernard walked up to Harry and looked at him deeply. "I love your father, just like I love you, Harry, and your friends love you as much." Harry choked and nodded, lowered his head, and raised it again. His eyes became firm. "Harry," he finally listened, "but why didn't Bernard say it until now?" Tony looked at the butler in confusion. Because Harry couldn't listen. How many times did Peter Parker say it? Did Harry listen? We all know how wrong Peter Parker was, but Harry still held on to him. Rod complained that Harry was too stubborn, and then suddenly said, "The narrator seemed to have told you to remember your thoughts at that time." Tony knew that the narrator of the Sky Curtain would not shoot without a target, and of course he also thought of the death of his parents, but he couldn't find any problems after checking. It has been too long since the car accident scene that year. Tony can now be sure that his parents were indeed killed, but he doesn't know who the murderer is, and Jarvis has not found any useful related clues. Above the construction site, in the taxi, Mary Jane stayed in the car. At this time, there was a sound of a rope breaking under the vehicle, and the car began to sway. Mary Jane looked around in horror. The car stopped shaking, and she breathed a sigh of relief. The taxi suddenly fell from above, and the spider webs made by venom along the way broke one after another. The car rolled down and fell. Mary Jane in the car screamed in horror. The people watching below also exclaimed and became worried about her in the car. Fortunately, the taxi was finally stopped by several black spider silks and was suspended in the air and kept shaking. Just then, a little girl pointed to the distance and shouted, "Look." Everyone turned their heads and saw Parker swinging on the spider silk in the distance, and they all applauded. Everyone at the scene shouted to him, "Spider-Man! Spider-Man! Spider-Man!" Parker used a horizontal bar to rotate and accelerate, and then used centrifugal force to throw himself above the construction site. Reporter Jennifer excitedly said to the camera, "Just when all hope was about to be lost, he suddenly appeared in mid-air, responding to the prayers of the city." Parker landed on the taxi. Mary Jane saw Parker appear and immediately said to him, "Peter, they want to kill both of us." Peter Parker certainly knew that this was a trap for him, but the most important thing now was to rescue Mary Jane first. "I will get you out of here." Eddie naturally couldn't sit back and watch Parker rescue people, so he attacked him from behind. Mary Jane saw it and warned, "Be careful." He was about to turn around when he was directly hit by venom and the roof of the taxi was directly knocked off by Parker. He barely managed to hold onto the rear of the car with one hand to avoid falling. When he got up again, Eddie in front of him stood at the front of the car, showing his face and smiling at Parker. "Hey, Parker." Parker only then realized that Eddie was possessed by venom and exclaimed, "OMG. Eddie, my spider sense is aching. You should know what I'm talking about," Eddie said as he pulled Mary Jane up with spider silk. Parker rushed up, but was hit back by Eddie and flew out, falling directly from the air onto the black spider web below. The people below saw Spider-Man fall and began to worry. Parker, who fell on the spider web, just turned around and was entangled by Eddie with 2 black spider silks. Then he jumped off the car and kneeled heavily on Parker's chest. Eddie took off Parker's hood. At this time, the black spider silk carrying the taxi could no longer hold on. The car began to tilt, which caused Mary Jane to scream again. Eddie turned his head to listen to her screams. A wicked smile appeared at the corner of his mouth, and he turned his head to look at Parker again. Parker wanted to persuade Eddie, "We can find a way to solve the problem. You are right. I'm considering humiliating you. Just like you humiliated me. You haven't forgotten it? Do you remember how you dealt with me?" Parker knew that Eddie hated him to the core, but he hoped that he would only come at him and not hurt Mary Jane. While Eddie was still talking, a construction truck also began to fall. Mary Jane was right below it. She saw that the back bucket was knocked open by the debris inside, and a building brick fell out of it. It smashed straight into the taxi Mary Jane was in, and Mary Jane was almost hit. Then another piece fell. Although Mary Jane dodged it, the door on the other side was smashed. Parker was anxious watching this scene from below, but he couldn't break free from the venom. Chapter 94. Looking at Parker's anxious look, Eddie couldn't help but laugh. He liked to see Parker's painful look of wanting to save people, but being unable to do so. This was the only way to vent his inner hatred. Mary Jane saw a brick that fell on the car and slowly lifted it up. Eddie knew nothing about what was happening above and was still saying to Parker, "You made me lose my girlfriend, and now I'm going to make you lose your girlfriend." Hearing Eddie's words, Parker angrily exerted force, and the black spider silk that bound his wrist began to tremble. "How is it, hero?" Venom wrapped Eddie up again, revealing a terrifying face. It raised its claws and was about to swing at Parker. Mary Jane aimed the brick at Eddie and threw it down. The hollow brick hit Eddie accurately, and he was enraged. He turned his head and roared upwards. Parker also broke free at this time and grabbed its neck. Venom turned around, and Parker punched it in the face. The two rolled down from the black spider web. They were still fighting in the air. Parker punched Venom away, then fired spider silk to hold him, but was kicked by Venom and turned over in the air. Parker fired spider balls continuously, but was blocked by Venom's spider web. Then it took the opportunity to catch Parker with black spider silk, closed the distance, and kicked Parker in the face, then avoided the spider silk shot by Parker and punched him again. Parker was beaten in the air by him, and Venom took advantage of the situation and fired black spider silk again to stick to Parker. Then kicked him with both feet, and then kicked hard. Parker fell directly to the ground, and he pulled himself back up with black spider silk. Parker tore off the black spider silk on his chest in the air with great effort, and then fired spider silk upwards to swing again. It was too late. He fell to the ground, rolled several times, and then lay on the ground. He got up and picked up the hood that had been thrown down before. At this time, the sound of spider silk breaking came from the truck above Mary Jane. Mary Jane looked at the truck falling towards her in horror and turned around subconsciously to escape. Then she realized that it was 100 meters high below. Looking at the falling bricks, Mary Jane turned her head and looked at the truck that was about to fall and plucked up the courage to jump out. The taxi was directly smashed down. Mary Jane grabbed a black spider silk. The truck fell to the ground, parts scattered, and a wheel almost hit Parker. He looked up and shouted anxiously, "Hold on, Mary Jane." At this time, the ground bulged, and Parker was unable to stand firmly and fell to the ground. A large amount of sand began to gather into a huge human figure. Marco stood up from the sand, and his huge figure made the onlookers flee in panic. He ignored the onlookers and punched Parker with his fist. Parker dodged nimbly. Compared with the Sandman, he was more concerned about Mary Jane, who could fall from the sky at any time. "Mary Jane." He shouted and dodged Marco's big feet again, smeared his eyes with a ball of spider silk, and then used his arm to swing up with the spider silk. Marco swung his arm and tried to knock Parker down. He failed to hit him, but destroyed the building next to him. As a result, Mary Jane could not hold the black spider silk. She fell from the sky and screamed miserably. Fortunately, she landed on the black spider web in the end. The soft and elastic spider web relieved the force of falling. Parker rushed upwards frantically. Mary Jane looked forward to him coming to save her, but Parker was thrown out by Eddie's car again halfway. He hit the steel bar hard and fell down. Eddie rushed over again and kicked him again. Parker was hit several times and fell on a steel frame near the ground. When he got up, Marco had stood up behind him and roared at him. When Parker was staring blankly at Marco's huge sand body, Eddie strangled his neck with black spider silk from behind and imprisoned Parker on the steel frame. Marco raised his fist as big as a sandbag and punched Parker hard. Parker, who was still struggling to get rid of the spider silk, was directly hit and unable to resist. Eddie smiled evilly, as if he had swallowed 10 Soul Hall elders, and the Sandman punched Parker again and again. Mary Jane above looked down worriedly, turned her head, and found that the taxi above her head began to be unstable. She turned her head desperately and looked at Parker below, who was beginning to be unable to bear it. The onlookers couldn't bear to watch this scene. Reporter Jennifer held the microphone and said heavily, "This is all unbelievable. It's too cruel. I don't know if he can continue to bear it." Hal Fishman was also very sad. For the people of New York, this is a sad day. This may be the day when Spider-Man's life ends. Parker stretched out his hand to Mary Jane, trying to touch him. Marco punched him again. Parker's outstretched hand fell down, and a little girl lay sadly in her mother's arms. Just as Marco raised his fist again, a Green Goblin grenade fell beside his ear. Marco was puzzled for a moment, and the grenade embedded in his head exploded. The violent explosion blew off half of Marco's head, and he was a little unstable. He roared in pain and anger. He grabbed a building beside him to stabilize his body that was about to fall. The crowd cheered, and 2 little boys shouted excitedly, "Great, super cool." The searchlight turned to the other side, and everyone looked over. Mary Jane also looked up and saw Harry flying over on the Green Goblin skateboard. He went straight to Eddie, who was still restraining Parker, and knocked him away with the Green Goblin skateboard, then slowly came to Parker, who was gasping for breath. Parker turned his head and looked at Harry weakly. "You're here." Harry stretched out his hand to him. Parker grabbed it, and Harry pulled him up. "It seems I came at the right time. A few minutes ago, things were not so bad." Hearing this, Parker smiled. Harry spread his hands and said with a smile, "What can you do?" The 2 brothers finally reconciled, and the next step is that Harry dies in front of Parker. Tony looked at the smiling faces of the 2 solemnly. They didn't know what they would face next. Egghead stared at the Green Goblin skateboard under Harry's feet with his one eye. If possible, he really wanted to copy it. And the physical enhancer, that was also what he wanted. As long as the side effects were eliminated, it would be a good thing. Chapter 95. At this moment, Venom's cry sounded, and the 2 immediately went on alert. Eddie and Marco appeared in front of Parker and Harry respectively. "I may need help." Parker looked at Venom with a serious expression. Harry looked at Marco, who was as big as a house, and said, "I'm a little busy now." Venom rushed towards them, and Marco also stretched out his palm to them. Harry shouted, "Give me your hand." Parker jumped up and grabbed his hand. With Harry's strength, he kicked Marco's palm and then kicked Eddie hard. Eddie broke through the ceiling and hit the beam, directly knocking a dent in the steel beam. Harry stepped on the Green Goblin skateboard and fired high temperature flames from the bottom to Marco. After burning for a while, Harry directly hit Marco's arm. The arm that was burned by the high temperature broke at the touch. The crowd exclaimed. Spider-Man 1.5 looked at this scene and subconsciously called Parker's name. After shouting twice, he realized that he was afraid that Parker was not here, so he said to himself, "I need a photographer." Then he saw the little girl next to him and asked her, "Hey, little sister, do you need a job?" The little girl looked at Jameson in confusion after hearing this. "Why do I need a job? I'm still a child." After hearing this, Jameson realized that it was illegal to employ child labor, so he took out his wallet and asked, "Okay, how much is your camera?" $100. The little girl smiled. After hearing this, Jameson shouted in disbelief, $100? But the scene forced him to give in, and he stuffed the money into the little girl's pocket. "Okay, you little profiteer. Here you go." Then he took the camera from her hand, pressed the shutter twice and said, "What are you doing?" He looked at the camera and found that there was no film. Jameson turned his head and looked at the little girl unhappily. The girl smiled and said, "The film is another price." 1.5 Generation Spider-Man didn't expect that he would be pecked by the eagle after fighting the eagle all day. He actually fell twice on a little girl, squinted at her, and silently took out his wallet again. "This girl is my granddaughter. She will be a great man in the future." An old man laughed and showed off his granddaughter to everyone around him. He was so old that he almost laughed to death. This black-hearted boss has come to this day. Rose wanted not to laugh, but it was too difficult, and Otto laughed with her. Jameson covered his head in pain. How many times has this happened? Why does Cheyenne Moo always expose these embarrassing things about him? Miss Brent covered her mouth and laughed secretly, but she didn't dare to move too much, for fear of being discovered by the boss. Many onlookers also laughed. This old stingy man was finally blackmailed. The black-hearted capitalist was controlled by a little girl. They wanted to see this report become the front page headline tomorrow. Harry was moving around in the construction site on the Green Goblin skateboard. Marco suddenly stretched out a hand to block him in front of him. Harry didn't even have time to turn around. "Got you." Fortunately, at the critical moment, Parker swung the spider silk to pull him away from the Green Goblin skateboard, avoiding Marco's attack. The Green Goblin skateboard detected Harry's movement trajectory and automatically returned to him. Parker swung hard, and Harry fell back on the Green Goblin skateboard with Parker's force. The next second Marco's attack came from bottom to top. The two narrowly avoided it, but a big hole was swept out of the construction site. Mary Jane on the top has been paying attention to the situation below, but she didn't notice that the black spider silk carrying the taxi above her head could no longer hold on. When Mary Jane heard the sound of braking, she turned her head and looked up. The taxi fell straight down, and the black spider silk along the way could not stop it at all, and they broke one after another. Harry noticed this scene and shouted to Parker, "Peter, pay attention to the top." Mary Jane rolled on the spider web to avoid the frontal impact of the taxi, but the spider web was also destroyed. The spider web that bounced back after being tightened made it impossible for Mary Jane to lie flat on it, and she fell directly. Fortunately, she grabbed a black spider silk at the last moment. Parker began to rush upwards, and Harry also came to help him. He pulled Parker onto his Green Goblin skateboard, and the two rushed towards Mary Jane together. Marco kept stretching out his palms to try to stop them, but they were all avoided by Harry's skillful control of the Green Goblin skateboard. In the hand of Mary Jane above the spider silk finally couldn't bear her weight, and she screamed and fell from the air. Parker tried to catch her with the spider silk, but failed because the Green Goblin skateboard kept spinning to avoid Marco. Harry immediately controlled the Green Goblin skateboard to chase her. "Can you fly faster?" Parker shouted. "Hold on." Harry also shouted to him. "Where to hold on?" Parker didn't understand what Harry meant for a moment, but it was too late to think about it. Under Harry's control, the Green Goblin skateboard cleverly avoided Marco right below and chased Mary Jane directly. "Go, man. I'm going to save her." Without further ado, Parker yelled and rushed towards Mary Jane, who was still screaming. Parker successfully hugged Mary Jane, then turned around and shot her spider silk at the Green Goblin skateboard, and Harry immediately controlled the direction to take them away. The people below began to cheer for them. Parker put Mary Jane on one of the floors and asked, "Are you okay?" Mary Jane looked at Parker in shock. "Yeah, that's good." Just as the two were still looking at each other affectionately, Harry's cry for help came from behind Parker. "Hey, Peter." Parker turned his head quickly, and Harry avoided Marco's powerful punch and shouted at them again. "I didn't disturb you?" Harry shouted at them. "Ha ha ha. Peter, you're not kind." Dr. Connors couldn't help laughing in class, and so did his classmates. Peter Parker couldn't help but lower his head. The brothers were still fighting, but he was looking at Mary Jane affectionately. This was simply not treating his brothers as human beings. Gwen also laughed, and then immediately covered her mouth. She didn't mind the tangled relationship between Peter Parker and Mary Jane in the sky. In reality, Parker has made up his mind to be with her, and her parents are very satisfied with Parker. Although George Stacy didn't say it, her mother actually told her secretly that George had admired Peter Parker in the sky before, and he changed his attitude only after she was pushed by Parker. She also believed that she would never lose to Mary Jane. Whether in appearance, talent or family background, she has an absolute advantage, and there is no reason to be afraid of Mary Jane. Moreover, she is not as petty as Mary Jane. As a global star, Peter Parker is a household name, and there are so many women who like him. If she is jealous of everyone, I'm afraid that she will not be able to contain her jealousy. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 96. Harry had just finished complaining about Parker and the others when Marco took advantage of Harry's distraction and reached out to his Green Goblin skateboard again. He didn't have time to distance himself from the Green Goblin skateboard before Marco's finger touched it. With Marco's huge size at that time, even if he just touched it with one finger, the weight would not be something the Green Goblin skateboard could bear. One end of it was lifted high and then turned twice in the air. Harry was also bounced up. At the critical moment, he grabbed the Green Goblin skateboard with one hand to avoid falling. Marco was unceremoniously slapping Harry with both hands at the same time, intending to slap Harry to death in his palms. Parker immediately rushed over to rescue him, leaving Mary Jane looking at them worriedly. He kicked one of Marco's hands away in time before his palms closed, and Harry was able to escape from danger after he regained his balance. Marco's main target was still Parker. He ignored Harry, who ran away, and punched Parker directly. Parker was swinging on the spider silk and had no place to get support. He was hit by Marco's solid punch. Marco took the opportunity to extend his arm and hit Parker directly against the building. This punch knocked Parker to the ground, and temporarily unable to get up, Marco turned his head to deal with Harry, who was flying around him like a fly. Fortunately, although Marco was huge, he moved slowly. Harry easily dodged his slap, flew far away, circled and rushed back. The Green Goblin skateboard under his feet ejected 2 macro missiles and fired at Marco. Marco's huge body had no way to dodge and was hit directly by the missiles. The huge explosion power of the missiles filled Marco's body with cracks, and his right hand began to shatter first. He staggered and finally fell to his knees, completely shattered, and stirred up a lot of smoke and dust. The onlookers cheered happily and danced. Will this kill him? Egghead glanced at Tony, who was lazing in front of him. No. I have studied it with Bruce. This will not kill him unless you completely melt him. Tony turned the pen in his hand and answered Nick Fury's question. Egghead nodded. He called Tony here for a very important matter this time. Just when Harry temporarily solved Marco, Parker, who was still lying on the ground, finally stood up reluctantly, and then he heard Venom's cry. He looked around nervously. He had just been hit by Marco's heavy punch, and his body had not recovered yet. If he was attacked by Eddie at this time, it would be bad. Parker was on guard and observing the situation around him. Venom's cry sounded around him from time to time. Eddie wanted to distract him in this way. At this time, Parker felt a movement behind him and immediately turned to look, but Eddie had already come to his head from behind him. He grabbed Parker's head directly and threw him heavily on the steel beam, directly denting it, and then Eddie punched Parker again and sent him flying. Parker fell heavily to the ground, and Eddie landed on his head. He wanted to get up, but Eddie used black spider silk to hang him up by his hands. Then he took a broken steel bar and hit Parker's head hard. Parker was a little dazed. Don't hurt those you can't kill. Eddie showed his own head and said to Parker, and then 2 more times. Parker's damaged spider hood was also destroyed. He took a deep breath and persuaded Eddie, "Eddie, take off that suit." Eddie flipped the steel bar, pointed the sharp side at Parker, and poked his neck and said, "Oh, so that you can be satisfied, right?" The cold steel bar poked Parker's neck, but he still wanted to persuade Eddie, "I know how it feels to wear that suit. It's great. With power and everything, but you will also lose yourself. Take it off." But how could Eddie listen to it? "I like to be a bad guy. It makes me super happy." Venom covered his body again, holding the steel bar and ready to end Parker's life. Just at the critical moment, two darts attacked him, interrupting his action. After being attacked, Venom roared angrily. Harry rushed towards him in the distance, and the Green Goblin skateboard under his feet ejected two sharp blades. Eddie jumped up in time to avoid the attack. Then it fired black spider silk to stick to the Green Goblin's skateboard, and Harry was thrown out again. He hit his head again, and when he fell, he hit a bunch of steel pipes. Eddie grabbed the Green Goblin skateboard that he had pulled back. The noise made by the steel pipes falling to the ground made Venom very uncomfortable, and his whole body was shaking. Parker on the side looked at this scene and recalled that he took off Venom thanks to the church bells. He realized that Venom was very afraid of noise. Harry got up from the ground and saw Venom, who had recovered, holding his Green Goblin skateboard and rushing towards Parker. Parker tried his best to struggle and escape, but he had suffered too many injuries before and couldn't use his strength for a while. Seeing this, Harry rushed up without hesitation. Parker saw Harry blocking in front of him and was pierced by the sharp blade of the Green Goblin skateboard. Parker's eyes instantly turned red and shouted, "Harry!" Eddie lifted Harry's body and threw it into the elevator shaft. Harry's body fell directly from the upstairs. Mary Jane below saw this scene and ran towards him. Inspired by the anger of Harry's death, Parker directly tore off the black spider silk on his left hand and then reached out to the steel bar that Eddie had left behind. Eddie also discovered his little move and rushed towards him quickly. Parker shot out spider silk at the critical moment to grab the steel bar in his hand, and at the same time, his right hand broke free from the restraints. He directly hit Eddie, who was flying towards him with the steel bar, and then picked up the steel pipe on the ground and hit it hard. The high decibel noise made Venom unable to move on the spot, and he was in great pain. Parker fiercely inserted two steel pipes into the concrete floor, then jumped to the opposite side and inserted two more, and then gradually sealed Venom inside with steel pipes. Venom still wanted to struggle to escape from here, but was hit back by Parker when he jumped into the air, and then Parker took the opportunity to insert most of the steel pipes around it. He himself took a steel pipe and began to knock continuously. As the noise became more and more piercing, Venom gradually could not attach to Eddie. Parker seized the opportunity when Eddie exposed his body and used spider silk to pull him out of the Venom, completely separating the two. Chapter 97. Just after separating Eddie from Venom, Parker suddenly felt a hair-raising sensation behind him, and his spider sense warned him frantically. He turned his head and saw the hideous and terrifying side of Venom. Only then did he realize that he had underestimated the horror of Venom. The fully grown Venom was distorted and weird in appearance. Its body was constantly stretching, deforming, and growing bigger, like a living nightmare. Its densely packed huge fangs and sharp claws flashed with cold light, which made people shudder. When Venom stared at Parker while roaring, he felt an indescribable fear and oppression that he had never felt before. Its roar was low and hoarse, as if it was a roar from hell, which made people's eardrums tremble. Eddie on the side also saw Venom's true form, but unlike Parker, he had completely sunk into the power Venom gave him, so after seeing the true form, he smiled with a bit of surprise. Parker stared at Venom, who was getting taller and taller, and was frightened by this terrible monster, and took 2 steps back unconsciously. Venom roared at Parker, and Parker suddenly used the steel pipe in his hand to hit the steel pipe inserted in the floor again. The noise made by the intersection of the two made Venom painful, and even his huge body shrank by 3 points. While Venom was affected by the noise and could not escape, Parker used spider silk to take out a Green Goblin grenade from the Green Goblin skateboard left by Harry. "Peter, what are you going to do?" Eddie on the side saw Parker's actions and immediately knew what he wanted to do. He wanted to stop Parker, but Parker threw the grenade at Venom without hesitation. No. Eddie rushed towards the Green Goblin grenade, and Venom took the opportunity to wrap the grenade and him in it, trying to possess Eddie again. Eddie. Parker saw Eddie rushing up and hurriedly tried to pull him back, but it was too late. Just as Venom wrapped him, the Green Goblin grenade exploded, and the strong light pierced Parker's eyes subconsciously. When the light dissipated, Parker put his hand down. Venom had completely absorbed the energy of the grenade and turned into ashes along with Eddie inside. Only the bent steel pipe and a little bit of black mucus on the ground were left struggling in the flames, but they soon turned into ashes and dissipated in the air. Marco looked at this scene, slowly shrank his sand fist, and turned back to a normal human form. Mary Jane hurried downstairs and came to Harry's side. Harry. Mary Jane. Harry called her weakly while lying on the ground. I'll go find someone to help. Mary Jane wanted to find someone to save Harry, but Harry held her back. No need. Stay. Harry knew how badly he was injured, and he was sure that he couldn't survive. At this moment, he just wanted to stay with his beloved Mary Jane and let her accompany him to the end. On the rooftop, Parker looked at Eddie and Venom, who were completely reduced to ashes, threw the steel pipe in his hand aside, and stood there in a daze. Eddie is completely crazy. He doesn't realize the horror of Venom at all. He is willing to die in order to gain power. Tony frowned tightly and looked at Eddie, who completely disappeared in the flames. It's hard for ordinary people to be willing to be ordinary people again after experiencing that kind of extraordinary power. You are the same. Now I ask you to give up the Iron Man armor. Are you willing? Boiled Egghead looked at Tony deeply and asked a fatal question. Tony was silent. He asked himself that he really couldn't let it go. The more he experienced the feeling of flying freely in the sky, the more he couldn't leave the armor. There is an old saying in China, it's easy to go from frugality to luxury, but it's hard to go from luxury to frugality. This is the same for everyone. Hill said something beside him. Tony turned his head and looked at her, admitting that she made a lot of sense. Gwen looked at the venom on her chest in surprise. Can you grow so big and so scary? Venom moved, changed from a spider pattern to a smiley face, and then changed back to a spider pattern, and continued to attach to the clothes. Marco stood behind and watched this scene. I don't want this. Hearing his voice, Parker turned his head and looked at him. He looked at the murderer who killed Uncle Ben, and he didn't know what to feel in his heart. On the one hand, there was Uncle Ben's blood feud, and on the other hand, he didn't want anyone else to die for this. But I don't have any other choice. Marco also felt that he was deeply sinful for what happened today. We always have to make a choice. When you killed my uncle, you made a choice. Parker couldn't suppress his anger in the face of his enemy, but without the venom, he was able to control himself. Marco explained, my daughter is dying. I need money urgently. I'm scared. Marco lowered his eyebrows slightly, recalling that night, Uncle Ben was waiting for Parker in the car. Marco knocked on his window with a gun, threatening him to get out of the car, and Uncle Ben was forced to get out of the car, but he was not afraid of Marco with a gun, but persuaded him, why don't you put down the gun and go home? It was not until this time that Marco realized that Uncle Ben wanted to help him at the time because he knew that crime would not end well, but unfortunately Marco was overwhelmed by his daughter's situation at the time. Listening to Marco's story, Parker's eyes gradually became red, and he could never forgive himself for killing Uncle Ben. Then I saw my companion running with cash, and I had a gun in my hand. Marco recalled the situation at that time. I did something terrible to you. I spent countless nights praying, hoping to save everything. Marco swallowed his saliva as Marco's gun went off. Bang! A gunshot rang out, and Uncle Ben fell down. Marco looked at the old man in disbelief. Get in the car. Kedin urged him, but Marco couldn't let go of Uncle Ben. He wanted to save him. Kedin saw that he didn't get in the car, so he drove away, leaving Marco and Uncle Ben, who was shot there. I'm not asking you to forgive me, I just want you to know the truth. Parker trembled his lips, shook his head subconsciously, and the sadness in his heart rushed out like a river bursting its dam. He took a deep breath and calmed himself down. I have also done terrible things. He sighed. Marco turned around and looked at the crowd below. I didn't choose to be like this. He stretched out his palm, looked at the necklace in the palm of his hand, and looked at the photo of Penny when she was a child. His eyes gradually moistened, and he turned his head to look at Parker again. "The only thing I miss now is my daughter." His eyes were red. Every time he thought of his daughter, he felt that God was so unfair, and all the bad things happened to him. Chapter 98. Parker looked at this man with a look he had never seen before. He only thought that men don't cry easily, but they just haven't reached the point of being sad. Marco's situation is also very miserable. Parker doesn't want to continue living with hatred. Uncle Ben is dead. Even if he kills him, Uncle Ben will not survive. After Parker was silent for a while, he remembered what Aunt May had said to him. He finally chose to let go of his hatred. Marco didn't want to kill Uncle Ben. It was a sad accident. He took a deep breath. "I forgive you." Hearing Parker's words, Marco nodded gently, then turned into sand and left the construction site. Parker came to Harry with the spider silk. Mary Jane was holding him. Parker half knelt beside him and looked at Mary Jane. Her eyes were red. "Hey, brother, how do you feel?" He looked at Harry a little nervously. "It can be better," Harry replied weakly. Hearing that Harry could still speak, Parker relaxed a little. "We will help you through this." A tear silently fell from Harry's eyes. He knew that he could still speak now only because of adrenaline. He shook his head. "No need." Parker realized that Harry was already in his last moments. Mary Jane looked sad, her lips trembling, and she tried hard to hold back the tears in her eyes and shook her head at him. "I shouldn't have hurt you," said those hurtful words. Parker regretted what he had done to Harry under the side effects of the venom. "Nothing matters anymore, Peter. You are my brother." Harry tried to force his smile and looked at Parker. Parker trembled slightly, then smiled. "Best friend." Hearing his words, Harry tried to open his eyes, glanced at Mary Jane, and then closed his eyes contentedly. Parker could no longer stop the sadness in his heart. Tears rolled in his eyes. He choked and called Harry's name, but he could no longer respond to him. Mary Jane held Harry's hand tightly, and as the sun rose in the sky, Harry's life dissipated at this moment. Harry is a man. He did what he said before, and sacrificed his life for Parker and Mary Jane. Tony looked at their figures in the morning sun, and said with a little sadness, "Indeed." Although the two had some misunderstandings, when the misunderstandings were resolved, Harry completely ignored what Peter Parker had done to him, and came to rescue alone. Boiled Egghead admired Harry's behavior very much. Norman looked at the brotherhood between Parker and Harry, and was very pleased. He always regarded Parker as his own son. If it weren't for the Green Goblin potion, he and Parker would have no conflict at all. Their relationship has been certified by the sky, and he believes that Parker will always stand behind Harry and support him, just as Harry unconditionally supports Parker. What hurt him a little was that both of them were killed by his own blade in the sky. Although he had brought it upon himself, Harry was innocent. Why did God treat them like this? Parker looked at the sky in silence. Gwen held his hand with some worry. Parker came back to his senses and patted his hand gently to indicate that he was fine. However, he still felt involved when he saw Harry's death in the future. At the funeral, the priest was reading the Bible. Parker and Mary Jane stood beside Harry's tombstone respectively. Aunt May stood behind Parker. Butler Bernard stood up and put a bouquet of flowers on it. Behind him sat Gwen and Director George Stacy. Gwen looked at Parker and then lowered her eyes. She didn't want to see Parker's face again. No matter what setbacks we encounter, no matter how much we struggle in our hearts, we always have to make a choice. My brother Harry taught me this. He chose his kind side. It is the choice that determines what kind of person we become. We can also choose to make the right decision. People at the funeral left one after another, leaving only Parker there to accompany his good brother. In the jazz club, Mary Jane stood on the stage and began her singing. I'm tired of love. I won't sing again. Don't call me again, because I don't want anyone else except you. Parker came to her in a suit and tie. He pushed the door and walked in, watching Mary Jane singing on the stage. So I'm tired of love. I gave my heart and now I'm sad. I stopped my heartbeat, and I won't love anyone else. Mary Jane, who was singing, suddenly saw Parker in front of her. He stopped singing involuntarily. Parker slowly walked up to her, and the two looked at each other. Parker stretched out his hand to her. Mary Jane slowly left the microphone, held his hand. The two looked at each other for a moment again, and then hugged each other. So they are together in the end. I feel that Mary Jane is still not worthy of Peter Parker. Rod also came to S.H.I.E.L.D. and just sat down and complained to Dr. Banner next to him. Banner didn't know what to say, so he could only smile at him. It's okay. After all, it's a relationship that has experienced life and death. Although Mary Jane always changes her mind. Although Tony was not very satisfied, he always felt that Gwen or Urizel was more suitable for Peter Parker. But Mary Jane and Peter Parker's relationship has also gone through a lot of tests, but I don't know if Mary Jane will change her mind again in the future. People all over the world are sad for Harry's death. The Sky screen was finished playing and entered another period of silence. The Egghead called Tony Rhodes and others today, and naturally he was not idle. This is the proof that you have passed the test of the Avengers. He handed a document to Rhodes. After Tony's recommendation, the Avengers agreed, and finally agreed to his joining. There is one more thing. In addition to Rhodes, we expect to add a new member, but he is not very convenient at this time. I will introduce him to you later. Who is it? Could it be an old antique that Coulson mentioned before? Tony said that he was very curious, and Nick Fury nodded without hiding it. Tony, who confirmed his inner guess, said in surprise, "Wow. Did you really save him?" Who? Rhodes didn't know about Captain America, and was still wondering who it was. Steve Rogers. We found him. His vital signs are intact, but he is still in a coma. I believe he will join us after he wakes up. Egghead explained to Rhodes briefly. Rhodes widened his eyes and was a little unbelievable. Who? Captain America? Yeah. Nick Fury nodded. To be honest, when he knew about this, he was also very shocked that Captain America was still alive and exactly the same as 70 years ago. Chapter 99. It's incredible. Where did you find him? Rhodes was a little excited. After all, this is the first superhero in American history. Coulson on the side explained to Rhodes the process of discovering Captain America. After all, he is a fanatical fan of Captain America. Since he discovered Captain America, he was even so excited that he couldn't sleep. Natasha walked in from the door. After seeing her, Tony greeted her. "Hi. Long time no see. Can you still summon your hammer?" Since the battle with the Destroyer, Natasha left Stark Industries and was replaced by Sharon Carter, Peggy Carter's niece. "It's not mine, but I can use it." Natasha corrected Tony's statement. "We have conducted a detailed examination of Natasha. Our medical researchers believe that Mjolnir's power has given Natasha unimaginable superpowers." Nick Fury explained why Natasha disappeared for so long. Because they arranged for people to do many examinations on her. This was for safety reasons, because they could not be sure whether the large amount of lightning would cause harm to her. At the same time, they also tested the physical fitness before and after picking up the hammer, but they soon discovered that Natasha could only stimulate the power of thunder and lightning when she had Thor's hammer. Since Natasha herself said that Thor's hammer was with Thor, and she could only use it after his consent. In other words, Thor had a higher priority than her. The researchers combined the fact that Mjolnir's hammer flew from Natasha's hand to Thor's hand during the battle against the Destroyer, and then Natasha's armor and divine power disappeared, so she was probably right. Egghead was a little sorry that they couldn't keep Thor's hammer, but fortunately Thor had promised Coulson that he would fight alongside them. It's just that after such a long time, Thor still didn't show up, which made Jane Foster very worried, fearing that he had an accident. Thor had been using Heimdall to relay the situation on Earth, and he also knew what Jane was thinking, but he was also helpless. The turmoil of the Rainbow Bridge had not been completely calmed down, and forcible use would only cause a greater energy imbalance. So he could only bear it and wait until the Rainbow Bridge could be used before going to Earth to find Jane. "You called us here today. What else do you want to tell us besides that Captain America is alive and well, and that Rhodes has officially joined the Avengers?" After watching the Sky Curtain, Tony was a little impatient to go back home and continue to build his own armor. "Of course. Do you remember the information I showed you before?" Egghead glanced at him and asked. "What? Which information?" Tony frowned, and for a moment he couldn't remember what Egghead was talking about. The cosmic cube. He reminded him. Tony finally remembered that he had indeed seen it, but at that time he didn't have the energy to pay attention to it. I want to invite you to study it with Dr. Banner, and Dr. Eric Shavag will also join in. I think this may be an important opportunity for us to win the war later. The people present were basically his own people, and Nick Fury didn't hide it, and directly revealed their research on the cosmic cube to everyone. We have been researching for decades, but there has been no progress. It was not until Dr. Eric Shavag came that we finally had a new breakthrough. Tony and Dr. Banner looked at each other. Tony admitted that he was indeed very interested in the cosmic cube, and Banner had not yet found a way to coexist peacefully with the Hulk, so the two of them nodded and agreed. Rhodes was a little confused about the situation. He wanted to know what the cosmic cube was, and Tony explained it to him briefly. We named this plan the Pegasus Project. This name comes from the Pegasus Project, which was the previous research plan of S.H.I.E.L.D. on the cosmic cube. Nick Fury changed Pegasus to Pegasus, implying that this plan could not only make the Earth fly, but also fly higher. Regarding Strange, we once wanted to find him, but were stopped. Who? Tony frowned. Ancient One. She is indeed very powerful. S.H.I.E.L.D's defense is like nothing in front of her. She appeared directly in front of us, and we didn't even know when she came. Hill recalled the situation when facing Ancient One. It was the first time she felt that she had no ability to resist. She, a woman. What did she say? Tony was a little surprised that Ancient One was actually a woman. He thought it would be a white-bearded old man. She didn't say anything, just warned us not to interfere in strangers' affairs, and then left. Egghead also felt a little powerless. Ancient One, it was too easy to kill him. This made the fake man feel very insecure. What did Strange say? Don't tell me you didn't go to find him? Tony asked, holding his head while spinning the pen on his fingertips. Indeed, we just sent people to follow him, and arranged people around Christine, and did nothing else. Nick Fury rubbed his eyebrows. Ancient One had said it so clearly, so he naturally wouldn't offend her. On the contrary, he also stopped many people with bad intentions for Strange. And Ancient One saw everything, but she didn't care about these things. She just kept thinking about whether she should continue to wait for Strange to have a car accident these days. She couldn't guess what Sky Curtain was thinking, and she couldn't know whether the things in the future would change because of Sky Curtain. This was the first time that Ancient One encountered this situation in so many years, so suddenly he didn't know whether he should respond. And Strange's life has been completely changed since Sky Curtain revealed his future, although S.H.I.E.L.D. blocked most of the malice for him. But he is a doctor after all, and he needs to treat illnesses and save lives. He always has to go to the operating table and face people's curious eyes. In the past, everyone thought he was just a surgeon with superb medical skills. But now everyone knows that he is the future supreme sorcerer, which leads to countless patients who only want him to treat them, while other surgeons are not very popular. Even if the hospital comes forward, it can't stop this situation. In a short period of time, Strange feels exhausted. At this moment, he really hopes that he can become a wizard as soon as possible, and then find a quiet place to hide from these people. Of course, Guyi also knows Strange's dilemma. After hesitating for a moment, she finally draws a yellow light door and appears in front of Strange. Strange, are you willing to be my disciple? Guyi looked at Strange, who was stunned by her sudden appearance, and asked calmly. After a while, he finally came back to his senses and nodded immediately, but then he hesitated a little because he couldn't let go of Christine after all. Guyi knew what he was thinking. Since she had made her decision, she had already figured out what to do. Chapter 100. By the time Nick Fury learned that Strange had disappeared, it was already the next day. The people from S.H.I.E.L.D. found that Strange did not come out to work, so they broke in. After searching the house, Strange disappeared without a trace, but there was no sign of fighting or damage in the room. They were sure that Strange did not come out, but he disappeared right under their noses. They wanted to search for tunnels, but were ejected. Neither S.H.I.E.L.D. nor S.H.I.E.L.D. wanted to provoke a future Supreme Sorcerer for no reason, and they were very concerned about the existence of Ancient One. Crossbones reported to his superiors that Ancient One invaded S.H.I.E.L.D. and took Nick Fury and Hill away in public, so Alexander Pierce naturally knew about it. They were afraid of the mysterious and powerful Ancient One, not to mention that the other party had lived for hundreds of years, and no one knew her methods. If they could take Nick Fury away, they could also take Pierce away. Before the Insight project was completely completed, Pierce didn't want to provoke her at all. After all, the higher the position and the more power a person has, the more he cherishes his life. On the other hand, Egghead quickly determined that it was Ancient One who took Strange away, because he had seen Ancient One's methods, and even if the other party was in front of them, they could not see it. Nick Fury could not think of another person who could take Strange away silently under their surveillance. Therefore, the fake man ordered to give up the surveillance and protection of Strange and withdraw all the manpower. At the same time, he also thought of Christine. Sure enough, after a while, their people also found that Christine and Strange disappeared together. It seems that she listened to what I said last time, and no longer waited slowly, and not only took Strange away, but also Christine. Nick Fury slowly pondered Ancient One's thoughts. Because of the revelation of the Sky Curtain's narration, he also knew that Strange had been entangled by countless people recently. But he didn't have any ideas. This kind of thing was too normal. When Tony Stark became the first person to be responded to by the Sky Curtain, S.H.I.E.L.D. blocked countless people from spying on him, and so did Strange. They just couldn't care less about the patients who were seeking medical treatment, and the Ancient One had already brought them to Kamatage. Teaching 1 was teaching, and teaching 2 was also teaching. Strange and Christine had already seen the magic of magic, and they were a little excited. Let's talk about two different things. Just when the Ancient One started teaching them magic, something happened in the first generation of Spider-Verse. After the silence of the Sky Curtain, Eddie was even worse. In the Sky Curtain, he was still obsessed with death, and finally disappeared with Venom, although it was his own fault. But in reality, he was already a street rat, and his situation was even worse. He was now completely desperate, without a job, and his family didn't recognize him. He was spurned wherever he went. So he became more and more daring, thinking that even if he couldn't survive, he would have to take someone with him when he died. His first target was Gwen. Didn't the Sky Curtain say so? They are either destined to be together, or they are separated by yin and yang. Then he fulfilled this statement. When he hid in the distance and fired 2 shots at Gwen, Venom instantly sensed the danger coming, wrapped Gwen in it, and blocked the 2 bullets. The moment Eddie saw Venom, he knew he had failed, and began to flee in a hurry. Gwen was frightened by the gunshot, and squatted on the spot, and dared not move. Venom retracted his clothes after realizing that the danger was over. The plan to assassinate Gwen failed, and Eddie's second target was Harry, because Peter Parker's feelings for Harry could be clearly seen through the Sky Curtain, and killing him would be worth it even if he died. In addition, except for Gwen and Harry, Uncle Ben and Aunt May were well protected by the police, and he could not get close at all. Eddie had calculated the time long ago. Regardless of whether he could kill Gwen or not, he would rush to Osborn Industries as soon as possible after shooting, and Harry would leave the company immediately, which would be his best time. Eddie knew very well that, if he could not catch Peter Parker off guard, he would never be able to retaliate successfully. At the end of the working day, employees who were leaving get off work appeared one after another at the door of Osborn Industries, and Harry's figure also appeared at the door of the building. Eddie, who had just arrived, had a rapid heartbeat. He took a deep breath and tried to calm himself down. Flint Marko followed Harry out. Harry saw that Marko was tall and strong, so he arranged for him to be a security guard. Marko had no objection. On the sky screen, he was a Sandman, but in reality he was just an ordinary person, without connections and knowledge. If Harry hadn't given him a job, he would have had a hard time living. Not to mention that Harry also funded his daughter Penny's medical treatment, which made the couple grateful to Harry. His wife kept telling him to cherish her. Marko passed Harry, and Harry saw him, and smiled at him. Marko was a little scared, but he also smiled at Harry. Eddie walked out of a small alley opposite the building. He was wearing a peaked cap on his head and a mask on his face. No one could recognize him at all. In the bustling crowd, Eddie walked straight to Harry. His unique dress instantly attracted the attention of many people, and people looked at him sideways. Marco also noticed Eddie's arrival. For some reason, he keenly sensed the strangeness of the atmosphere and realized that something might be about to happen. Harry also saw Eddie, and his face showed a puzzled expression. He didn't understand why someone would dress like this in broad daylight. Eddie's eyes revealed a murderous look, and his steps did not hesitate at all. When the distance was slightly closer, he took out a pistol from his pocket and pointed it at Harry from a distance. Harry and Marco's faces turned pale instantly. The people around them looked at the gun in Eddie's hand in horror. Marco reacted the fastest. He pushed Harry away and tried to protect his benefactor. Bang, bang, bang. Several gunshots broke the tranquility of the dusk. The gunshots echoed in the sky, causing panic among the people around. The employees of Osborne Industries and passers-by began to scream and flee, and the scene fell into chaos. Harry was pushed to the ground by Marco, but he still looked up and looked at the masked man in front of him in horror. His heart was full of fear and confusion. He was sure that he had not provoked anyone. Marco quickly got up, pulled Harry up, and started running into the building. Seeing this, Eddie shot at Marco. Marco could not dodge and fell to the ground with a bullet in his back. Harry saw that Marco was injured, and he quickly climbed up and dragged him into the building with his hands and feet. At the same time, the company's security personnel immediately took out a pistol. Seeing this, Eddie quickly hid. Seeing Harry hiding in the building, he could only start to flee from here in anger. His cap accidentally fell off during his hasty escape, and the surveillance camera captured his hairstyle and eyes. Due to the large number of people at the scene, the security personnel did not dare to shoot at will, and could only watch Eddie run into a small alley and disappear. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.